is so risky to try to make a living with art. But Jordy was compelled to create.
Jordy was always chill. I've never seen her upset, but towards the end, you could see the darker stuff come out.
When she didn't show up, her mother knew something was wrong. It was enough to drive her to file a missing persons report.
I actually located a steak knife in the bushes. I just remember thinking, holy crap.
We want to talk to you about it, get your side of everything.
We were just horrified something like this could happen to somebody like Jordy.
Once I made the connection, the glasses being hers, I started thinking that there's a lot more to this than just a missing person.
Your fear is you're not going to find her alive.
Spring 2016, St. Augustine, Florida. A picturesque seaside town with a thriving art community. Jordy Hudson is in her element, fresh off a successful art show.
She stood out from everybody else. She was always into what her passion was, art. Me liking art and her being an artist, I kind of looked up to Jordy. Always nice, genuine person. Way chill, way mellow.
Her work was different than most anything I'd ever seen. It was very visceral. Jordy put her heart and soul into it.
It was real, and it was genuine and original.
Jordy came from a family of artists, and from an early age had a strong persona.
She was just one of those people that just was very confrontational. It was evident in her personality. It was evident in her art.
She was tattooed. She was real punk looking.
She was always on the fringe. She was always out to make a statement. A leader, never a follower.
In 1985, at just 15 years old, Jordy attends the University of North Carolina School of the Arts. After that, the School of the Museum of Arts in Boston. And by her early 20s, her art is exhibited in galleries across the country.
It is so risky to try to make a living with art. But Jordy was compelled to create.
But Jordy's success is not without its struggles.
Jordy had meningitis, and possibly as far back as her college days. She had issues of lightheadedness. She had some serious muscular problems to the point where she literally could not walk or talk.
Jordy was sick for a long time. I knew that she was on some type of medication.
In 2012, when Jordy is 42, she moves from Milledgeville, Georgia, to an apartment in St. Augustine, Florida, to be closer to her mother, Judy.
Jordy's mother was a big support for her. Her mother was her caretaker, driving her around and handling her medications, which were numerous.
St. Augustine turns out to be the perfect place for Jordy to continue working on her art.
It literally is an artist's hangout. It has quite a vibe to it.
St. Augustine's always been a pretty artsy town. Way back when, there was a kind of a big hippie scene.
In late summer 2012, Jordy's success hits a setback after her health takes a near-fatal turn.
She could not speak that clearly. She talked about having had dizzy spells. She was having to use a cane at some point, so she was having a very difficult time with this meningitis. Her illness brought out some rawness, some real heart, real emotion in her artwork.
She put her illness into her work. You could see the darker stuff come out, and it stuck out. And I believe that's because of her illness. Jordy only mentioned her illness 1 or 2 times throughout the time I knew her. She wouldn't let that hold her down.
I just think that her having this fatal disease couldn't help but influence her. I own a gallery called Space 8 here in St. Augustine, and I gave Jordy her show in 2012. That whole exhibition was under the context of her dying soon, like very soon. In advance of the show, we always get media coverage, and at the time, there's a publication called Folio magazine. They were sent to cover her and talk about her art.
Very first meeting, Jordy was one of those people that was memorable in so many ways. I photographed Jordy at her studio. She was in bad shape. They're not pleasant, happy photos. She was in a difficult time of her life, so we tried to reflect that. This cover shot, I didn't direct her. She was so good in front of the camera, and she would just bare her soul to me. She was a dream subject, somebody that wears their feelings on their sleeve out for all to see.
She had a teardrop tattoo under one eye. That was the only tear that could come out of that eye because she had no more tear duct. Just sad.
It's so striking that it was hard to take a photo that didn't mean something when you take a photo of Jordy. She was a very genuine and heartfelt person. When I was leaving, she said she wanted to give me a gift. She insisted that I take this medallion and do treasure it still.
This issue of Folio Weekly is released in November 2012. Jordy's friends and family believe this will be her final art show.
Because we got so much press and because the story was so unique and compelling, it drew a big crowd. People were very excited about it. She was literally on her deathbed leading up to the show, during the exhibition. And I think it was just really emotional for her to get the acknowledgement for her art, not her, illness.
And soon, perhaps motivated by the show and the feature, Jordy's health improves.
It had gone into remission. I remember being surprised and being, happy that she beat it.
Over the years with Jordy, we would run into each other, would talk, and it's normally only about our art.
Here's an artist who apparently was recovering, who was getting stronger. She was back on the upswing.
She had that attitude that I'm totally comfortable with what we're doing, and she was great.
Jordy was just thriving and creating art and in not letting her illness drive her.
On Monday, April 11th, 2016, Jordy doesn't show up for her weekly visit with her mother, Judy. That causes Judy to become concerned.
Jordy Hudson would stop by her mother's place on a regular basis to pick up a stipend for rent or for food. When she didn't show up, her mother knew something was wrong.
When 3 days go by with no word from Jordy, Judy contacts the St. Augustine police.
At first, we weren't really concerned. We get calls all the time. My wife didn't show back up home. She hasn't been home all weekend. And come Monday, she shows back up because she's, been out partying.
I wasn't sure if she was just hanging out at someone's house, never came home.
But with these kind of investigations, we have to turn over every rock. We started looking at police reports and hospitals to locate Jordy.
The day Judy reports Jordy missing, Sergeant Etheridge responds to an unrelated call at 88 Cedar Street in St. Augustine.
The homeowner had called and said he had seen somebody's personal effects in his driveway, some blood on the sidewalk, and he wanted to make sure that nothing had occurred, that no one was hurt or injured.
When I went up there, I started talking to the homeowner. He showed me a pair of glasses, and where the blood drops were, they were right on the edge of out by the road on the driveway, close to the fence. Took, some samples for evidence, just in case something came up of it at a later time. I went and collected the pair of glasses and brought it back to the police department.
When he returns, Sergeant Etheridge continues reviewing Jordy's case and makes a disturbing connection thanks to the photo of Jordy that Judy had given to the police department.
The photo she provided had Jordy in dark frame glasses.
I scrutinized the photos a little bit more. I was able to see the hinge on the glasses detailed, and I compared them to what I had in my hand. And it was a dead ringer for the glasses in her photo. Once I made the connection with the glasses being hers, I started thinking there's a lot more to this than just a missing person.
We're thinking maybe she had gotten into a scuffle, something like that had possibly occurred.
Investigators worked to identify Jordy's final moments.
I watched the video surveillance. I knew she was definitely with somebody that night, and that was our first break.
Last time I saw her was when she walked out the door. No idea that would have been the last time.
And using every tool in their arsenal, they focus on finding answers.
There was video surveillance directly in the area where the blood was located. How did we get so lucky?
It was when we showed her the picture, she realized that we knew what we were talking about and that she needed to fess up.
The day Jordy Hudson is reported missing, detectives have discovered her glasses in the yard of a home in St. Augustine, Florida.
Myself and Detective Watchguy went back out to 88 Cedar Street and started really doing a lot of more detailed search.
Not too long into the search, we discovered a large amount of blood in the bushes.
There was a significant amount of blood. But it wasn't just somebody tripped and fell. It was a lot of arterial spray on the bamboo, on the fence, and, puddles of blood.
There was enough blood that we realized something definitely bad had happened to Jordy. I was starting to look through the underbrush. As I was moving it apart with my hands, I actually located a steak knife in the bushes. I just remember thinking, holy crap. One of the first things that we did is we went to Jordy's house. I looked around to see, was there a struggle? Did something happen? Is furniture overturned? To see if any items are missing. But nothing seemed out of place.
As detectives are leaving Jordy's home, they run into her neighbor, Fred Stanley.
While we were at Jordy Hudson's house, Fred Stanley was trying to get our attention. We walked out to him, started talking to him. We asked him, hey, when's the last time you've seen Miss Hudson? And he goes, well, we were at the Giggling Gator bar the prior weekend, which was the 9th of April. She was supposed to show up at her mom's house the Monday after the time she was at the Giggling Gator, and she never showed up. That, in turn, led us to go to the Giggling Gator and try to get video that night of who she was talking with, who she might have left with, and just any information that could show us where she might be.
Detectives head straight to the Giggling Gator, which is just half a mile from 88 Cedar Street, where police located Jordy's glasses and the knife the day after she went missing.
The Giggling Gator is basically like a dive bar. We've been there for just various, calls for service, fights, or whatever.
I worked at the Gator off and on for about 12 years. We do get a lot of tourists, but at the end of the night, it's usually people we already know. The police. I was at work, and they came in and said Jordy was missing. You feel worried, and you wonder, if they're safe or not. The next question is, what's your involvement with Jordy? I'm just a bartender, and she's a patron.
With any investigation, one of the first things we start looking for is video surveillance. And I personally knew the Giggling Gator had a lot of video surveillance from previous cases that I'd worked.
The detectives are in luck. They're met with a treasure trove of video. They scroll back in time to Saturday, April 9th, hoping the video will shed light on Jordy that night.
There was no audio with the video surveillance from the Giggling Gator, so we have to try and put our mind in interpreting what the video is telling us.
The Giggling Gator was a little bit hectic. I noticed a couple of males that were in the back of the bar arguing.
They continue scanning through the video second by second. At 1:36 a.m., they spot Jordy. And she is wearing the glasses police found at 88 Cedar Street.
I was working that night, and she came in. She said hello. You know, first thing I asked, how you doing? What can I get you? You could tell that her spirit was up. Jordy was having a decent night, a good night.
They also see Fred Stanley, her neighbor.
I could see Jordy come into the bar and that Fred was following her in. They ended up hanging out, having a couple of shots. And after a while, it looked like they got into a verbal argument. And Jordy seemed very upset and agitated.
You're just trying to figure out what was the incident between Mr. Stanley and Jordy?
It kind of looked like Fred was trying to get her to leave and she didn't want to go. Eventually, Fred left the bar and Jordy stayed and continued to have a couple more shots.
The argument caught on video leads detectives to wonder whether Jordy's neighbor, Fred Stanley, may be responsible for her disappearance.
We watch Fred leave the bar and walk down the street. He was never in any of the other video surveillance that would indicate he came back to do anything to Jordy.
By looking at the video, you can eliminate people or you can include people. And in this case, with Mr. Stanley, it excluded him.
Jose tells investigators he didn't notice anything unusual inside the bar that night.
I remember actually taking a break or have a cigarette. Jordy displaying her new pieces and stuff. She did mention, like, some of my stuff could be dark. She asked questions like, are you into that type of work? And I told her I'm very open-minded. Just have to see it and see if I like it or not. So I remember when I said that, she smiled and she said, that's cool. Maybe you should come check out my new work. That's when I agreed to do it. You know, like, okay.
Jose doesn't know that these will be his final moments with his friend.
Last time I saw her was when she walked out the door. I just remember her saying, I'm going to go hang out with some people. I expected to see her later on that week. No idea that would have been the last time.
As the detectives continue watching surveillance footage, something catches their eyes.
We saw the outside surveillance cameras, a large male and a couple other guys taking their shirts off like they were going to fight.
I remember there was altercation. There was an incident with two guys outside that I had to take care of. The bigger guy, I remember grabbing him and, you know, giving him a bear hug and trying to pull him back. He was a little bit bigger than me, intimidating. You know, the tattoos, the size of them. It was the first time and last time I saw that guy.
The large male was covered in tattoos. One was a big giant sword and head tattoos. After that fight kind of dispersed is when you see Jordy walk outside and begin conversing with this large white male with the tattoos.
They didn't seem like they were having issues, Jordy and the male. We noticed two of the males walk off with her.
The glasses were on her face when she left the bar at 3 o'clock in the morning. And then as of Monday morning, those glasses were in the driveway next to blood.
Whoever the men seen walking off with Jordy are, they are now suspects in her disappearance.
I knew she was definitely with somebody that night, that something had happened, and that was our first break.
Your fear is you're not going to find her alive.
On April 15th, 2016, a day after Jordy Hudson's mother reported her missing, investigators have found surveillance video of her leaving the Giggling Gator bar with two unidentified men.
We saw the outside surveillance cameras, and we saw her leaving with those two individuals.
Watching the video surveillance, I knew Jordy, but nobody else had a name. I had no clue how we were going to figure that out. It's during the time that I'm watching the video surveillance that one of the bartenders says he recognizes one of the males and knows his name, Trinity Boykin. Trinity had gotten into the fight with the man that Jordy had left with. Trinity was not a suspect only because we saw Trinity leave, and he didn't leave with Jordy. So when the bartender told me that he knew Trinity Boykin from the video surveillance, that was my first clue that, okay, maybe he can have some other names for the other subjects. My goal at that point was to get him in to talk to him. When I ran Trinity through our police database, I had his information, his telephone number.
Detective Ochkai contacts Trinity and asks him to come in the following day for an interview.
So when Trinity comes in for the interview, we told him, you're possibly a witness and we just want to know the information that you know. He tells me that he had a history with Harry, which was the guy's name that he gave us.
Trinity does not know Harry's last name.
He tells me that they ended up arguing over an ex of Harry's that Trinity was now friends with. Trinity didn't like the way that Harry had treated her, and so it came to blows outside. But he says, I left and I haven't seen Harry since. So at that point, we just start figuring out a way we can find Harry. This is somebody that we needed to track down and talk to.
As they work on identifying Harry, investigators are also trying to learn more about Jordy's movements on the night she disappeared.
At this point, we decide to look to see if we could find more video surveillance of Jordy after she left the Giggling Gator.
We weren't sure where they went, but we had some idea because the investigators had found blood on the scene on Cedar Street.
We hit every road and house in that neighborhood looking for video to see if we can see them.
There's a lot of bed and breakfasts back there because there's some historic homes. If you had a B&B, you certainly would have had some security.
One of the Airbnbs had a pretty good video surveillance system that had night vision that was pointed pretty much directly in the area where the blood was located. We were like, how did we get so lucky?
Investigators immediately begin reviewing the footage, hoping it will show what happened to Jordy on the night of April 9th.
It's very time consuming because you're watching the video frame by frame, minute by minute, at the same time as it's actually live. You don't want to speed through it because you can miss something.
Though the footage is grainy, they spot two individuals walking down Cedar Street at nearly 3 a.m., shortly after Jordy left the Giggling Gator.
When we picked them up on video, that third subject was no longer with them, and it would just appear to be Jordy and this large white male with tattoos on Cedar Street.
Two people got to one spot. You can clearly see them walking down the street. You're like, okay, this is going to get me somewhere good. We're getting closer to it, finding out what happened on Cedar Street.
They're talking, and then at one point, they were walking down into more shadows across the street where we located the blood. And now they look agitated. They look upset. They look like they're arguing.
The headlights of an oncoming car illuminate what happens next.
You see what appears to be an upward motion with the male's hands as if he's stabbing the female. And the next thing you see is she's on the ground and he's dragging her body into the driveway. We had no clue that that's what we were going to recover, that it was going to actually be a video of her being stabbed and then tossed over the fence. And we were just shocked.
Detectives in St. Augustine, Florida have uncovered home security video that captures Jordy Hudson's horrific final moments.
I watched that video, and you can see him pick her up and throw her on the ground several times. And then finally, at one point, he picks her up and throws her over a little white picket fence and just walks away. Like nothing had happened. The difficult part was there's no ifs, ands, or buts in my mind. I was watching Jordy get murdered.
The police, they came and said Jordy had been murdered. That'll hit you hard. You'll stand back and look at it. I can't imagine it. It's shocking. Felt sad about her, losing her, knowing that I'm probably one of the last people to talk to Jordy. It made me think, okay, this is the last place she was at. What happened to her? Could I had maybe 5 more minutes of conversation? Could I had changed the whole night? That runs through my mind, what could I have done for this been prevented?
Well, everybody was shocked that could happen here. We were just horrified trying to figure out how something like this could happen, especially to somebody, like Jordy. I mean, it's unthinkable that somebody could do that to somebody that's so vulnerable.
Now I need to do everything in my power to find where she is so I can at least give her mom that closure that she needs to be able to bury her daughter.
Despite the poor quality of the video, police are able to determine the man who killed Jordy is the same tattooed man who was seen leaving the bar with her.
He had a very distinct tattoo of a cross, and you can barely see it because, again, the quality of the video is not good, but it was good enough that you could see that tattoo on Cedar Street, and it matched the tattoo that he had from the Giggling Gator.
Detectives have only been able to identify the suspect as Harry and have no way to track him down. They turn back to the surveillance to see if they've missed anything.
At about 6:30 in the morning, we see a car pull up directly in front of 88 Cedar Street, and the back door opens up.
2 people exit the vehicle. Detectives recognize the first as Harry, but they can't identify the woman who is with him.
We could tell that the female that was with him was very short. She did not appear to be taller than the car.
You can tell that she's acting as the lookout.
You can see Harry lift up what we believe was Jordy over the fence and put her in the back seat of the car. He gets back in the driver's seat. The female with him gets back in the passenger seat, and they drive off heading eastbound on Cedar Street.
When the car leaves, as it drives by, you're doing everything you can to maybe get some identifiers to the vehicle. We could tell from the video that it was either dark blue in color, possibly black.
As they're watching the video, one of the detectives states he believes the car is a Nissan Versa.
We were like, there's no way. We can't figure that out just by a video. And he was like, I'm telling you right now, I recognize the taillights and the headlights. It's going to be that car.
If they can identify the owner of the vehicle, it could lead them to Harry.
I'm trying to go frame by frame and get any information and get that tag number. We had a couple more tools in place that could enhance video, help us get that tag number. One of the guys that works there, he's great with video. He can do some stuff with video that's amazing. We aren't lucky enough. We were able to identify that tag number. At that point, they were able to identify the last name of somebody that owned a vehicle matching that description.
We were able to pull up the license tag.
The vehicle comes back to a woman named Judith Branson. A quick search reveals she has a son named Harry. Investigators now have their suspect's full name: Harry Branson.
After we got the last name Branson, we were able to pull Harry's police record. And fortunately for us, when somebody goes to jail, they take pictures of all their tattoos. And the one tattoo that stood out with Harry's police record was a very big cross on the front of his chest and his skull tattoos on his head.
From the size, the height, the weight, everything else with the tattoos, he was easily identifiable.
Now, knowing his name, there actually is a way we can find him.
St. Augustine police identify Harry Branson as the suspect in the murder of Jordy Hudson. They can't find him, but they do get hold of his mother, Judith.
She told us she knew nothing of what had occurred. She had woken up the next morning and her car was where it was supposed to be and she had gone to work. And all of us believed she didn't know what her son had done.
Miss Branson wasn't aware that he had taken her car, and at first she's like, no, that's not him, because we showed her a picture of him. The large tattoos all over his body and the head tattoos. And eventually she's like, yeah, that's my son, Harry. And she agreed to let us go through her car to see if we could find any evidence. We opened up the doors and we saw a lot of reddish brown staining that appeared to be blood. At that point, we sealed the car up and it was transported to the evidence tech to go through and see if we can find anything.
At that point, Branson knew we were onto him. He found out the police were talking to his mother, and he ran.
Detectives believe their best lead to Harry may be the woman seen in the surveillance video with him, but they still have not been able to identify her.
We started looking for females that he could be associated with.
They discover police recently responded to a domestic dispute at Branson's residence. The victim in the report is his girlfriend, Christine Thomas.
We discovered that Christine Thomas was very short. She was like 4'11", and she matches the height description when she was standing next to the car.
So Christine's brought in for an interview.
And your name?
Christine.
Christine.
Do you know who I'm talking about when I say Harry?
Harry Branson.
Yeah.
We have had an on-again, off-again relationship since I got here in January.
Have you ever been to Cedar Street here in town? Do you know where Cedar Street is?
No.
I'm going to tell you that we have several videos from Cedar Street, or Friday night into Saturday morning, with a female that looks very similar.
It's you. Okay. I want to know why I have you at Cedar Street on film.
I don't even know where Cedar Street is.
She definitely is not being cooperative. There were quite a few questions that she totally lied.
That video shows you and Harry, okay, on Cedar Street.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I'm telling you, Saturday morning, we have several surveillance cameras.
It's having to be pulled out of her instead of telling the truth.
This is Jordy.
Yeah, because I've never seen a lady in my life.
It was when we showed her the picture of the Versa and her standing there next to it on the passenger side is when she realized that, we knew what we were talking about and that she needed to fess up.
Would you share with me what the first thing out of your mouth was when he called you?
happened.
So you said to him, what the fuck happened? What did he tell you?
Harry said, hey, we need to go check this girl I got into a fight with. She tried to rob me. So they drove down to Cedar Street where the incident occurred.
All of a sudden, she pulled a knife on him. Well,
Pulled a knife on
Harry.
Harry? Okay, okay.
So he either went like that and pushed her, or whatever, and I guess she flew over a fence.
Branson put Jordy's body in the back seat of their car. They drove out to County Road 13, and he ended up burying her body.
On April 19th, 10 days after Jordy Hudson's final moments were caught on video, detectives arrest Christine Thomas. That same day, they finally tracked down Harry Branson.
Branson had been on the run. He was hiding maybe a half a mile away in a little creek behind some people's houses.
Lucky for us, we were able to get the U.S. Marshals involved, and they were able to get him in custody.
On the way back to the station, Branson says he wants to talk.
What happened?
I about got in a fight at the Giggling Gator,
Mm-hmm.
and the people I was with took cabs and left.
As an investigator, one of the greatest things that we can do with a suspect is let them talk. So instead of interrupting him, we let him tell his whole story, because eventually the evidence is going to prove otherwise.
It was the girl and some guy. They said they was going to give me a ride home.
Okay.
But we had to walk back through the neighborhood to go get the car.
Mm-hmm.
And next thing I know, we walk around the corner and both of them pull out knives on me. Started saying, empty your pockets.
He stated that to protect himself, he ended up killing her. He was scared, he was frightened, he didn't mean to do it.
The guy hauled ass.
Okay.
He just dipped out.
After Branson was completely finished with the story, the decision was made that we would let him know we had video surveillance. Once I told him we had video surveillance of the whole crime, he put his head down, closed his eyes, and sat there for a little bit. And then after a couple of minutes of sitting there, he looked up and said, "Okay, I'll tell you the whole story."
On April 19th, 2016, 10 days after Jordy Hudson was last seen alive, St. Augustine police arrest Harry Branson for her murder. Branson originally claimed he killed Jordy in self-defense, but now he says he's ready to tell the truth about what happened.
We have the whole thing on video. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to be 100% truthful with us. Branson told us that they had left the bar, that they had been hanging out and talking, and at some point, Jordy said something to make him mad.
I don't even know what she had said, but I snapped. I completely lost it, and I don't know why or how.
He punched her in the face. And his story was that at that time, Jordy pulled the steak knife from her purse and tried to attack him.
She swung the knife at me, and I grabbed her hand and shoved it back at her, and it stabbed her in the throat.
She was much smaller than him, so if he was trying to attack her, I don't know that is wrong of her to pull a knife. She may have pulled a knife, but you can't tell that from the video.
After his interview and him eventually telling us what had occurred, he agreed that he would give us the location of the body so that we could put Jordy to final rest.
Branson leads police to his property in a rural part of the county.
When you go up and you turn to the yard, there's a fire pit right over there, under the fire pit.
Did you burn her? No.
I buried her. I freaked out. I didn't know what to do.
He told us that he had started a bonfire afterwards so that nobody would see where he had just recently dug up the ground.
All right, so she's buried right there.
Yeah.
We had the evidence technicians from the sheriff's office start coming out, and we started excavating the fire pit. Ultimately, we located Jordy Hudson. She was wrapped up in a shower curtain in the hole about 3 feet down.
Her injuries are consistent with what Branson described in his confession. But there's an additional grisly detail he failed to mention.
Apparently, he cut off her fingers to remove the rings. It was unknown if that was a robbery or just an attempt to remove rings that might have helped identify her. What really gets me is that one of those cut off fingers was shoved into one of Jordy's neck wounds.
When the results of lab tests on Branson's mother's car come in, they strengthen the case. The blood is matched to Jordy Hudson.
Officials say Branson has been charged with murder, and Thomas has also been charged with accessory to murder.
Branson faces a mandatory life sentence for the murder of Jordy Hudson. But in a bid to avoid life behind bars, he pleads guilty to second-degree murder and abuse of a dead human body.
Branson is a very violent subject. He would not say why he did it. He refused to tell us what exactly she said that made him mad.
Without the video, this crime may never have been solved. We may still be here today trying to find out where Jordy's at.
On May 30th, 2017, 13 months after the murder, Harry Branson is sentenced to 50 years in prison. For her involvement in the crime, Christine Thomas pleads guilty to accessory to second-degree murder and is sentenced to 8 years in prison.
The way she passed, that's just, nobody deserves what happened to her. That's not normal. Makes you think like what you could have done, or what would, could you say something else? It weighs heavy on you. It's something I'll never forget.
To create art seemed like such a natural part of her. She was just larger than life. I regret not acquiring a piece of Jordy's art. She was one of the true originals. I just never expected for her to die, because then it's like the creativity stops,
He loved his hockey. It was their thing.
He was so present in his son's life. They did everything together.
He was meant to take care of kids and give them a second chance.
Ricardo Hebe is doing everything he can to be a positive influence in these kids' life. He's stabbed 3 times in the chest, and he's left for dead. Is there an old score to settle? Is this something from Ricardo's past?
We have this murderer out on the streets. Everybody was scared.
A lot of the details were just so gruesome.
The final moments of Ricardo Hebe's life must have been horrifically terrifying.
December 2018, Winnipeg, Canada. Ricardo Hebe has a lot to be grateful for this holiday season. He and his fiancée Candace are planning a big wedding in the new year, and he's found success in the real estate business. But growing up in Winnipeg's North End, this happy picture was far from guaranteed.
North End, Winnipeg is a place that has substance abuse issues related to crime. It's a city that has some real struggles.
Ricardo's early years, he had a lot of tumultuous relationships in his life with family or guardians. He kind of had to navigate on his own. We went to the same high school. His energy was so enigmatic, like everybody wanted to be around him. We just met one night and the rest was history.
His parents separated when he was young. They both left Winnipeg. He stayed because he didn't want to leave. So he ended up staying with one of his friends. We talked about his childhood. It was very broken.
On Ricardo's 16th birthday, an act of kindness changes his life.
One of his friends, his mom took him in. She was a single mom raising her own kids, and she was a foster mom as well. She just took him in, supporting him. As long as he went to school, that was the deal. And he kept that deal with her and got good grades. He was actually an honor roll student. He calls her super mom.
After Ricardo graduates from high school in 2002, he is touched by another act of kindness that changes his life.
We met through a mutual friend of ours, Sean. I've been doing home renovations and construction for 15 years now. He's like, oh, would you mind if I worked with you? I'm not going to get paid. I just wouldn't mind, somebody teaching me how to do these things. I said, yeah, absolutely.
Over the next several years, Ricardo learns Richard's business and eventually becomes his partner.
He was successful in real estate. Like, he could have retired probably by the time he was 45 if he would have kept at it.
Then, in December 2010, when he's 26 years old, a mutual friend introduces him to Candace Walasha.
He was this mean-looking guy, but so friendly and nice. So his laugh and his smile right away. And then we just hit it off there. He said, you're mine. And I said, okay. He ended up signing his name on me that night. And I came home, my mom was like, what the hell is on you? And I was like, oh, God. I was like, I found my love. I'm like, he signed me. So we're stuck together now. I was like, I found my forever. And I did. I really did.
A year and a half later, Candace gives birth to a baby boy.
I can't even explain it. Just seeing his eyes, holding Junior, that was his world. Everything was about him. He had to be with him 24/7.
On December 14th, 2014, 2 years after Junior is born, Ricardo asks Candace to marry him.
He was really excited to get married. That was kind of the last little bit to solidify their family as a unit.
But a chance encounter puts those plans on hold.
A couple of friends were doing group homework, and I think when he went there, he looked at these youth and he saw part of himself in these kids.
A group home is an environment where multiple people who are vulnerable live together. And it really hits home that these teenagers are just like him, who need stability, who need guidance.
Ricardo decides that the best way to repay the acts of kindness that turned his life around is to create his own group home for at-risk teens.
He just kind of followed his calling. He was meant to take care of kids and give them a second chance.
Transforming a property he owns into a group home takes several months and becomes Ricardo's sole focus. He even decides to postpone his wedding so he can fully concentrate on his newfound mission.
He signed up with an agency, which then certified him. He was approved, and 3 teenagers were placed in his care.
He gets to do what he loves, and he gets to keep kids off the street. And the kids loved him. He would take them to the gym. He was adamant on them going to school. He did everything with them. He wanted them to do better. They would laugh, they would even call him the dad. They looked up to him. It was like home. We'd have supper there with the kids. Our kid was there all the time.
By the winter of 2018, 4 years after he proposed to Candace, Ricardo is ready to plan their long overdue wedding.
We planned his wedding party. I was supposed to be the best man in his wedding. He wanted to proceed with it and to get married.
As Christmas approaches, Ricardo takes his family out for one of the favorite activities he enjoys sharing with his son. Cheering on the Winnipeg Jets.
He loved his hockey. It was their thing. Every Jets game they'd be watching, screaming. He just wanted him to be... His main thing was hockey. That's what he wanted him to do.
It was him and his son at the Jets game. He had season tickets, so he would always go to all the games and bring his son. He was so present in his son's life. They did everything together. You could just see he's just so happy and laughing.
They don't know that this happy night will be their final moments together as a family. On December 17th, Ricardo agrees to give his former business partner a hand with one of his construction jobs. At lunchtime, he tells Richard he's got to go run an errand.
I remember it vividly. Every time we leave for the night, we're not going to see each other till the next day. He would always do this side fist bump to me. And so the day of, he was saying he has to go home, and then he's going to get something to eat, and he'll meet me back at the house. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. And then he did one of those fist bumps. And I remember it was like my brain took a picture of it, because I looked over and I seen his hand, and I remember almost taking a picture of my hand touching his hand. I looked at his hand and I pulled my hand back, and I was thinking in my head, I'm like, I'm going to see you in 20 minutes. I just had this intuition that was the last time I was going to speak to him.
At 2:30 p.m., a call comes into the Winnipeg police reporting a disturbance at Ricardo Hebe's group home.
Ricardo Hebe was on the phone with a lawyer at the time. So the lawyer hears a commotion, knows that there's something wrong.
The lawyer calls 911, and patrol units are immediately dispatched to Ricardo's group home.
They find Ricardo Hebe on the ground, covered in blood.
Detectives try to decipher a clue that could crack the case.
Somebody is lying. Somebody knows something about that blood stain on the door.
While they grapple with the question of who would want Ricardo Hebe dead.
We have the citizens coming together in uproar, thinking, what is going on in our city?
What did he do wrong? Nothing. He opened the door. He's trying to defend his home and defend the children in his care.
I didn't see real. I lost it because it was like a nightmare.
Winnipeg police responding to the group home run by Ricardo Hebe find him critically injured after being attacked and clinging to life.
You're looking at a chaotic scene. He's stabbed 3 times in the chest. He's left for dead. He's bleeding out. They're going to do whatever they can to save his life. The paramedics take him to the hospital as quickly as possible.
As Ricardo fights for his life, the search for clues about what happened to him immediately gets underway.
The forensic unit attend the crime scene and collect all the blood samples. They're going to collect DNA samples from different surfaces. Maybe the offender got caught in a struggle and has blood on the floor.
Detectives also launch an urgent search for witnesses. They discover that 2 of the 3 teenage residents of the group home were in the house when Ricardo was attacked.
These kids, he said, they were in their rooms at the time when this happened. The investigators have to consider everything and everyone. This attack could have been connected to any one of the 3 boys that live there.
As the investigators interview the teens at the crime scene, they have their colleagues back at the police station check into the residents' backgrounds.
Investigators ask the gang unit and in the drug unit if there's any open investigations involving the group home or the people who live in the group home. But they find the opposite, that Ricardo Hebe is running a really clean ship and he's doing everything he can to be a positive influence in these kids' life. They actually have a lot of respect for him and they speak very highly of him.
The teens also tell the police there's one more resident of the group home who's known to everyone as CH, but they haven't seen him all day.
CH was not there at the time. It's imperative that the investigators find CH and interview him as well.
Detectives get the addresses of CH's school and work and begin trying to track him down. As they do, word comes that this has just become a homicide case.
Ricardo Hebe was pronounced dead at the hospital.
Ricardo's fiancée Candace is home when she gets the call that turns her world upside down.
Hearing the word said he's dead. I didn't see real. I lost it because it was like a nightmare. I couldn't speak, I couldn't think, I couldn't breathe half the time. I would lay there like begging him to come back. He was my everything. Losing him literally destroyed my life.
I'll never forget that phone call because all I could hear was Ricardo's dead. And instantly I dropped the phone. I couldn't breathe. I fell down. I was crying. Thank God my husband was carrying our child because I was completely distraught. It was just heart-wrenching.
As Ricardo's stunned loved ones try to cope with the terrible news, Winnipeg detectives continue looking for reasons and potential suspects.
Why did the suspect do this? Is there an old score to settle? Is this maybe something from Ricardo's way past and somebody has asked this guy to go there and kill him? Who knows? But you can't rule out any of these options.
He didn't have any enemies. He didn't have anybody that had a personal vendetta against him. He never screwed somebody over.
Investigators examining the crime scene make a major discovery that they hope will shed light on what happened.
There's a camera showing the exterior of the residence, so it would show anyone coming up to the door.
Police are able to quickly review the surveillance video, and when they do, they learn the camera was an eyewitness to the murder. They are able to play back Ricardo Hebe's final moments.
The surveillance footage shows a man in a black coat walking up to the group home. There is a brief interaction. You can't hear what's said, but the man in the black coat pulls out a knife, stabs Ricardo 3 times.
The crime was shocking. Here's a guy who is running a group home for vulnerable children. What did he do wrong? Nothing. He opened the door. He's trying to defend his home and defend the children in his care. And then he gets stabbed. The final moments of Ricardo Hebe's life must have been horrifically terrifying.
Despite showing the murder, the footage yields no clues to the identity of Ricardo's killer.
Unfortunately, the images are grainy, they're fuzzy, and they're just not good.
The exterior camera showed the suspect wearing a black jacket with a fur-trimmed hood. The hood was up.
The footage shows that Ricardo's attacker approached from the street and never entered the house.
The 2 kids who were in the house, they're ruled out at this point.
For detectives, it's now more urgent to find the one resident who was not home at the time of the murder, CH.
It's imperative that the investigators find CH and interview him. Maybe he knows something that the other kids didn't know. And also to be able to account for his location at the time the offense happened.
It's not clear where CH was at the time of Ricardo Hebe's death. Police are just trying to piece together if he's connected to all of this.
The day after Ricardo Hebe is stabbed to death, detectives are urgently searching for the one resident of Ricardo's group home who cannot be accounted for, a teen known to his friends as CH.
At this point, the investigators still haven't tracked down CH. The first obvious place to check would be the school and his place of work. It turns out that he didn't attend either of them on that day, which is a little weird because he was expected to be in school and he was scheduled to be at work, but he didn't show up for either. And there's no account of where he is or where he could be. So they cannot rule him out or rule him in any way at this point.
News of Ricardo's murder spreads through Winnipeg, stirring both grief and anger.
This was quite a high-profile murder in Winnipeg. It affected a lot of people, and the question I kept coming back to was, for what? Why did this happen? There's really no clear answer. I thought it was just so brutal because of the fact that Ricardo was quite a pillar in the North End of Winnipeg. It was just such a sad story. I mean, this man dedicated his life to trying to help young men who were in a similar position to him, so it seemed just so tragic that he would die while doing something good for the community. It just felt very cold and brutal. We have
The citizens coming together in uproar, thinking, what is going on in our city? We have this murderer out on the streets. We're all going out in support because we don't want this to die in the media. We want it to be up close and personal with every resident of this city because this is all of our issue. You know, it was my best friend who lost his life, but it could be my neighbors tomorrow. Everybody was scared. And so I think pushing it in the media was the only way that we were going to get any traction with finding this guy.
Two days after Ricardo Hebe's murder, as detectives continue to search for CH, police get an unexpected visitor.
On December 19th, CH arrived at police headquarters and tells the officer at the desk that he understands that homicide investigators want to speak to him. He tells police that he doesn't know who would have had reason to attack Ricardo. He doesn't believe it had anything to do with him. He certainly denies being part of the attack or having any knowledge whatsoever of it. The investigators want to know, where was he at the time of the attack? CH tells the investigators that he was at his girlfriend's house. His alibi is that he spent the whole afternoon with her, and that's why he didn't go to school, and that's why he didn't go to work. He said that he was dealing with some relationship issues, and that's why he hadn't come forward. And he claims that he didn't know anything about the homicide until he had recently heard about it, that police wanted to speak with him. CH says that he was with his girlfriend, Trinity Moore. Police now have to confirm that alibi.
CH gives detectives Trinity's address. They head straight to her house to check his story.
When police arrive at Trinity's address, they see that there's a blood stain on her front door. Trinity denies any knowledge of it, and she says that's the first time that she's seen that blood.
Trinity consents to police taking samples from the blood that's found on her front door.
The blood samples are sent to the police lab for testing as detectives continue their interview with Trinity. They ask if she can confirm CH's alibi, that he was with her on December 17th, the day of the murder.
Trinity told the investigators that CH does come over a lot, and he stays over there, and he spends lots of time with her at her home. However, she says that on the day of the homicide, he was not there.
In fact, Trinity tells the detectives she hasn't seen CH in days.
He's saying that he was there all day. She said, no, he wasn't. So someone's lying. Somebody knows something about that blood stain on the door.
Detectives investigating the stabbing death of Ricardo Hebe believe a teenage resident of Ricardo's group home has lied to them about where he was at the time of the murder.
CH says that he was with his girlfriend, Trinity Moore, but she said that she didn't see CH that day.
With his alibi in doubt, investigators now wait to see if DNA tests on the blood found on Trinity's door can connect CH to the murder. But they also have some follow-up questions for him. This time, CH is easier to locate. They find him standing outside the group home where he lives.
CH tells them that Trinity is mistaken, and he said that sometimes she takes medication and she forgets things, but he's actually angry that she says that he wasn't there, because he is adamant that he was there. His alibi is very shaky. With There is no physical evidence to tie him to the scene. At this point, there is certainly not enough evidence to charge CH with anything.
4 days after Ricardo's murder, just 4 days before Christmas, the DNA test results from the blood stains on Trinity's door come in.
Those bloodstains came back as a match to Ricardo Hebe's DNA.
It is not contaminated with anybody else's DNA. It is Ricardo Hebe's DNA, and it is definitely something that happened after his attack. This is a huge break in the case because now there is a direct link from the crime scene to Trinity's front door. So somebody who killed Ricardo went through that front door and deposited Ricardo's blood on the door.
The test results convince detectives that Trinity knows more than she's told them about how Ricardo's blood got on her door. They rush back to her home to confront her. And that's when her story about the day of the murder changes.
She says that CH was there, that he was actually hiding in the back room. Trinity told the investigators that they have a rocky relationship at this time, and they had a fight. She says her brother, Kane, became aware of the altercation that she had had with CH and was furious. She didn't tell her brother that CH was in the back room, and her brother, Kane, left and he went looking for CH. She actually provided her brother with the address of the group home. And when he came back, he had blood on him, and as he left the blood on the door handle at the front of the house.
She says that he shows up, she sees his hands are bloody, and she sees him in possession of a knife, and she observes there's blood on it.
Was he looking to find CH and thought he killed CH? Or was he just lashing out at somebody? There's a couple of different possibilities here. The investigators show Trinity the images from the security camera from the front of the house where the attack is captured. She actually tells the investigators that her brother Kane has a jacket like that.
Trinity told investigators that she hadn't seen her brother since the day of Ricardo's murder.
She lied to police because she didn't want to get her brother in trouble. She was trying to protect her boyfriend as well.
With Trinity's statement, CH is cleared of any suspicion.
Now the investigation has taken a completely different turn. It looks now like Kane Moore is the number one suspect. Once he was identified as a suspect, the investigators are going to look at his record.
Kane had a history of violence. He had a history of unprovoked attacks. Kane went to Stony Mountain, which is just outside Winnipeg. It's a federal prison. It's for serious and violent offenders.
While he's in the penitentiary, he's involved in another serious incident. He's a suspect in another stabbing inside in the penitentiary.
Kane was facing charges related to the death of another inmate.
Despite the pending charges, investigators learned that in October 2018, 2 months before Ricardo was stabbed to death, Kane Moore was granted parole and released from prison.
He's a very dangerous person, but he was not designated a dangerous offender by the courts.
He wasn't even supposed to be out on the street. In his parole documents, it stated that he is high risk to reoffend, and somehow he was let out.
When I found out, I was furious. How do you allow someone out who killed someone inside? If you can't protect people in there, how are you supposed to protect them out?
He's very volatile and he's got a very dangerous background, so it's urgent to find him as soon as possible.
Winnipeg detectives are on the hunt for 21-year-old Kane Moore, the prime suspect in the murder of Ricardo Hebe.
At this point of the investigation, the investigators have to find Kane Moore. It is imperative that they find Kane Moore.
Kane's sister Trinity tells the detectives that she has not seen or heard from him since December 17th, the day of the murder. Investigators begin tracking down other family members, hoping for a lead to his whereabouts.
His family are somewhat cooperative. They say that they haven't seen him in quite some time, but it can only be taken at face value because they could quite easily shelter him. The investigators went to all the known hangouts and the areas where Kane Moore has frequented and is known to frequent. They're not getting the best cooperation in these neighborhoods. Nobody wants to be seen speaking to the investigators. Nobody certainly wants to cooperate with them. And they draw a blank. They're not getting anywhere. Kane Moore's parole has been revoked at this point, so the investigators get a Canada-wide warrant for Kane Moore. They'd circulate a bulletin with his picture and his description to every officer.
After 2 weeks of an intensive search that began just before Christmas, police still have no sightings of Kane.
Nobody knows where he is. It looks like he's gone to ground and nobody can find him. He's on the run.
It was a brutal holiday season for Ricardo's friends and family. They're dealing with this awful tragedy, but they also have no answers. There are very few details at this point about where the main suspect in this murder is.
It took a huge toll on me, physically, mentally. I wasn't eating, I wasn't sleeping from the stress of it.
That just completely shattered everybody. It's unexplainable. My brain was numb. I just was trying to, soak in the shock.
Another week goes by with no progress in the manhunt. Then, on January 6th, 2019,
cadets that work with the Winnipeg Police Service came across an individual that was just walking on the street, and they were concerned that he was intoxicated.
They approached the individual who provided them with a false name. However, when they detained him for being intoxicated and they searched his pocket, they found identification in the name of Kane Moore with a photograph that matched him.
Once cadets clue in and realize that they have the main suspect in Ricardo Hebe's murder, they call detectives immediately.
The cadets take Kane into custody and bring him to the station.
Kane Moore was arrested wearing a black winter jacket. The man who appeared in the surveillance video taken of Ricardo Hebe's death was also wearing a black jacket.
But when detectives show Kane the images from Ricardo Hebe's security camera, he insists it's not him.
He doesn't give anything up.
Kane Moore clams up, he denies any involvement in the murder, and he asks for a lawyer.
Kane Moore never admits to attacking Ricardo Hebe, and he never admits to killing him.
But when investigators examine the jacket Kane was wearing when he was arrested, they make a critical discovery.
Police found blood stains inside that jacket. Investigators test the blood that's found in this black jacket, and the DNA matches Ricardo Hebe's DNA. Kane Moore is arrested for the murder of Ricardo Hebe.
There's a lot of inexplicable killings that occur, but in this case, even though there was no clear motive, there is enough evidence to suggest that Mr. Moore was upset with CH.
Kane Moore wanted to get into the house to find CH, and Ricardo blocked him. He was protecting the kids in his house and doing what he was supposed to do. And Kane Moore wanted to get in there and lashed out the way he always does, violently.
Kane Moore is charged with 1 count of second-degree murder. Ricardo Hebe's loved ones are shocked to find out he was killed by a stranger.
Kane Moore, he's never been around us. We never had him at the house. Like, we had no idea who he was.
The news kind of came out that it was just some random guy. I was angry. We'll ever sit down and have a conversation if this guy asked me for forgiveness. I don't think I could do that.
Kane Moore's trial begins in September 2020. Prosecutors are confident they have the evidence to convict him of murder. They call their star witness, Trinity Moore, the accused killer's sister, to the stand and ask her about what she saw the day Ricardo was murdered.
Trinity Moore gave a sworn statement to police that her brother Kane Moore showed up, that she saw he had bloody hands.
Trinity Moore recants her statement when she's called as a witness. She tells a completely different story. When Trinity Moore changed her story, now there's the possibility of an acquittal.
Kane Moore is on trial for the murder of Ricardo Hebe. Prosecutors expect his sister, Trinity, to testify that he came to her home after the murder, covered with blood, and confessed. But her testimony stuns them.
When she gets up on the stand, she completely contradicts what she had told investigators.
She says that her brother was not involved and never came over.
She said that when she spoke to police, she didn't know what she was saying because she was high and drunk at the time.
When Trinity made the 180 turn on her story, it throws a wrench in the prosecution's case.
But even without Trinity's testimony, prosecutors can make their case to the jury solely based on the physical evidence.
That black coat that Kane Moore was arrested wearing wound up being a central piece of evidence.
There was video surveillance and forensic DNA evidence. We played the surveillance videos that show the individual approaching the residence, and we showed the actual stabbing. We also showed Kane Moore leaving the house.
The video surveillance and the forensic DNA evidence links him to that house.
Candace was there every single day. She seemed extremely strong given the circumstances, but when that surveillance video was played in court, she left sobbing, but she was there start to finish. I don't really know how she did it because a lot of the details were just so gruesome.
The jury deliberates for 6 hours. And on September 24th, 2020, reaches its verdict.
He was convicted of second-degree murder.
He's got a life sentence with no chance of parole for 15 years.
For Ricardo's family and friends, the sentence only adds to their pain.
He did not deserve anything less but life in prison with no eligibility for parole. And that's something that is still hurting us because he's still going to be eligible to come out eventually.
It's a really sad irony because Kane Moore is the exact type of young man Ricardo Hebe would have wanted to help. So you can't help but wonder if things could have gone differently. That didn't need to end up like that.
I accepted that there's nothing I could have changed. There's nothing that anybody could have done.
It wasn't supposed to be for him. This shouldn't even happen. He was taken from me. Not having him around, I am very, very lost still.
Despite the pain they live with every day, Ricardo's loved ones try to stay strong and keep Ricardo's memory alive, especially for his son, Junior.
Everybody dealt with it in their own way. I still have a good relationship with his son. I'm godfather to his son. I've made him a promise when he was alive, and I'm just fulfilling that promise to look after his son.
I want people to know that his heart was there. He wanted the best for these kids. It's just, everyone knows his legacy was left. And his smile, and just how genuine he is. And that's why I want to keep going. Our son has love for hockey. So he's an all-star now. Ready, he wants to play the Jets, he says. I said, do it. Your dad would be proud. He would watch you. He's a little hockey star now. But now I'm a hockey mom, so I got this. Did it for him and his dad.
Do you guys feel that basketball saves lives in our community?
Oh yeah, it's definitely. Can't be out in the streets. Because it is my fault. So if you're in the gym, worse than in the streets, you might have just rushed a bullet that was for somebody else before you.
You know, our whole world collapsed in that day.
And whatever coward did this, I hope you caught. Turn yourself in.
It was willful, deliberate, premeditated. They wanted Lamont Adair dead.
He was a good child. He was a good guy. He was doing something that, mattered.
The video is chilling because you just see the brazen act very clearly.
And my brother did not leave the house thinking that he was going to die that day. He was the one who made the call for him to come up there. He was the one who put Lamont in a location to be a victim of this murder.
Summer 2018. Seat Pleasant, Maryland. A tough suburb just outside of Washington, D.C. A 24-year-old aspiring basketball star, Lamont Adair, has just earned the opportunity of a lifetime. The chance to play professional ball in China.
Oh, he loved basketball. It didn't matter what was going on. If someone called him, Lamont, you want to play ball? He was there. I'm Urania Jackson. I am Lamont's older sister. He always had a basketball somewhere in his hands. Next to family, basketball was everything.
You think it's funny too? You think it's funny?
He was just really excited. My name is Darlene Rainey. I'm Lamont William Jr.'s mom. He didn't care if he went overseas. He didn't care if he played for the NBA. He just liked to play ball. I thought he played better than Michael Jordan, but you know.
For him, it was like the break that he's been waiting for. Everything was falling into place. Everything was going the way he wanted it to go.
Lamont's path to professional success was full of adversity, but he's always had the support of an adoring family.
Lamont was born on October 23rd, 1993, in the morning, the day of my baby shower. I was helping, well, I wasn't supposed to be helping with the baby shower, but I was. So I started having labor pains.
We were setting up decorations and everything, and she started having contractions, and she drove herself to the hospital. I was in the 6th grade, and I remember being so excited. He had everyone's heart and wrapped around his fingers, basically.
A little spoiled, but in the sense that that's family, and he's a baby brother. Whatever he wanted, he could have gotten from any of us.
Oh, Lord. As a child, Lamont was very busy. Anything that we were doing, he wanted to do it. That's where his basketball career came in, because we would play basketball across the street from my grandmother's house. So whenever we played, we didn't go easy on him. We would just play him just like anyone else. Like, you're going to have to beat us to get to the court. So I think him going through that, it actually helped build his skill.
He started to really hone in on his craft. Like, he was really good at it and really competitive. And then when he started getting taller, it was just like, wow. We called him Monty, but on the basketball court, they called him Tree. He did own the name Tree, just like in his reach, reaching for the ball, being able to dunk.
High school success leads to a chance to play college ball in the Midwest.
He's the first out of all of my mom's kids to go away to college, so we're excited. Iowa was a bit far for us, but you know where he is, and you know he's going for a purpose.
I said, so what do you do out there in Iowa? He's like, they don't do anything but tip cows out here. And I was like, what is that? He's like, they tip cows over. I think he really missed home a lot.
After some basketball injuries and bouts of homesickness, Lamont drops out. Back in Seat Pleasant, he must contend with a different set of concerns.
The level of violence is escalating here. It worried him to come back home. He was scared that something would happen to him.
You would hear of gun violence. You would hear of, different tragedies. If you cross out of Maryland, you're right there in D.C., and sometimes the crime from D.C. would come over into Prince George's County.
But Lamont continues to work on his game, and in 2018, earns his shot to play in China. Months earlier, he received even more thrilling news from an ex-girlfriend. Lamont is going to be a father.
His son's name is Makai. I remember the first time meeting him, I was like, he is the epitome of his father. It just is amazing how DNA is passed to the next generation, because he acts just like him. His stance and everything is just like him.
On August 7th, Lamont shares exciting news about his son with his sister Urania.
I remember he came and showed me a video, and he's like, did you see Makai walking? He shows me the phone. He was like, he's walking.
Oh my gracious!
And this is as he's leaving out of the door. And I give him a hug, and I said, I love you, be safe. And he was like, okay, I'll see you later. And, I hold that memory and I cherish it, because who would ever think that that would be the last time I see my little brother alive?
The next day, Lamont's older sister receives an alarming call.
I'm at the gas station pumping gas. The phone rings. This guy that Lamont grew up with, he's like, your brother just got shot.
He just got shot. Like, what do you mean he just got shot? Oh no, your brother just got shot. And so, like, I started crying. I asked where it was. He said it was on Craig Street. And when I called 911, I told the operator that somebody just called me and told me that my brother was shot because they sent an ambulance. And she said the police were there. I'm praying that he's okay. Like, please keep the blood flowing to his heart.
I'm Jonathan Church. I'm a Deputy State's Attorney in Prince George's County State's Attorney's Office. The police get a 911 call for the shots fired on Grigg Street. And when they arrive, they find that a man was suffering from multiple gunshot wounds.
My name is Thea Zumwalt. I'm an Assistant State's Attorney in Prince George's County, Maryland. Paramedics arrived within minutes of the call. He was found between a parked car, and then the curb, and they determined that he was unresponsive.
So as soon as he is pronounced dead, homicide unit shows up. One goal is to come collect all the forensic evidence that they can find. He has his phone with him. So they do identify him as Lamont Adair. And then that starts the homicide detectives running.
The reports that they were getting was that a car drove by and was firing. So they had casings all along the road that they had to make sure that they got them all.
It was somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 fired cartridge casings, which really indicates to us that the gun was fired probably to the point of where it was empty. It was apparent based on the location of the gunshot wounds that some of those are what's called defensive wounds, where he was moving and trying to avoid being shot at, which would give you an indication that the person was walking up on him as he was firing as well.
There were several buildings to this complex, and that apartment complex did have several cameras. So they made it a priority to secure the footage for that.
They don't get to view it right away, so they're dragging in as much potential evidence as possible that might help solve, number one, what that vehicle was, and then who was in the vehicle at the time, and then who would have had a reason to do this.
And once the initial scene is secured, and in this case there was no one who committed the crime who was on scene, so they were able to secure it pretty quickly. And it was a pretty large area that they had to cordon off.
So when we got in there, they had it taped off and wouldn't let us get to where he was. And they was, not letting me see him. No, you can't come close. I said, no, I'm going to see him. But when you deliver a baby and they cut the umbilical cord, it's still an invisible umbilical cord still there. Because you can feel one of your kids, there's something going wrong. I just think about how a waste of life it was.
Investigators discover critical clues in Lamont's final moments.
This person who shot Lamont knew him.
A surprising motive emerges.
The phrase everybody uses is, the streets are talking.
There were several rumors that he was a snitch for the police.
And the killer's inner world is revealed.
He's hot-headed. He gets angry.
On 8/8/2018, this is where Lamont William Adair Jr., Tree, Monty was murdered at. Today is his 27th birthday. We miss you, Monty. Rest in peace. Baller for life.
As investigators process the scene of Lamont Adair's murder, local media race to cover the tragedy.
And whatever coward did this, I hope you caught. Turn yourself in.
So a crowd starts to gather because it's a very populated area and it's midday. There's an entire team of detectives that spread out and look at different things, knocking on every door of every apartment that had a window that oversaw where this happened, asking people's names and identification information and phone numbers. What did you see?
There really wasn't anything clear in the immediate information that the detectives received for them to go to figure out why him.
In search of leads, detectives turned back to a piece of evidence recovered from the crime scene.
When Mr. Adair is found, he has his phone with him, and the phone can be like a wealth, a treasure trove of information. They can identify who his family members are, who he is in particular, start talking with family members.
Later that evening, investigators asked Darlene about Lamont's movements that afternoon.
I told them they were living at my house. Lamont and Makai. Lamont had his room downstairs. So he was down there about maybe 2 or 3 hours playing with Makai. And then I think he got a phone call because he came upstairs and he went in the, he said, "Here, Ma, take him." He was going out to work out like he normally did, but he was meeting somebody.
What she didn't realize is what seemed like an everyday moment would be one of Lamont's last.
I don't know why, but something just told me look out the door. When I saw him walking down the street, and he was gone.
So initially, after talking to family and friends of Lamont Adair, there isn't somebody that readily stands out as a suspect because he's not involved in anything that we're aware of that would have made him a target.
Investigators then turned their focus to Lamont's online activity in the days leading up to his final moments.
There are a team of detectives checking his social media to see who he posted recently with, what he might have said, whether it was something that might have been responded to hostilely.
From what was in his phone, he lived a normal 20-something-year-old talented, handsome individual's life. I mean, he played basketball, he dated women, he loved his little boy, loved his family.
There's videos of him on Instagram, and Makai would be on his legs, around Lamont's neck, and he's up here rocking him to sleep. And he'll fall asleep like that, like laying on his head.
On August 4th, just 4 days before he was murdered, Lamont posted images from a local charity event.
Lamont did a benefit basketball game for an organization called Hoops for Peace.
Do you guys feel that basketball saves lives in our community?
Oh, yes, definitely. Can't be out on the streets, As it is my fault. So if you're in the gym and versus being in the streets, you might have just messed up bullet that was for somebody else before you. It's just better to be in the gym playing basketball or working out than being outside hanging with your friends.
Lamont was actually cautioning the kids about the streets not having anything for him. And so it's chilling.
He was saying, I'd rather be in the gym playing ball than to be getting somebody else's bullet or somebody shooting me.
On August 6th, 2 days before he was killed, Lamont posted this image on social media.
His reputation was that he was active in his community. He was trying to inspire others to be better people.
There really wasn't anything definitive in his phone that pointed us in any direction about who did it.
Lamont's family, however, believe his growing notoriety and recent success may have made him a target.
A lot of people were upset with Lamont because of the opportunities that he has. And we're all like, we know he was just about to go play basketball overseas, and really a lot of people were jealous of him.
He was headed to the basketball court not far from where he was shot and killed. Who was he meeting there? Were the people there that were supposed to be there? Where were the people that he was supposed to meet if they weren't there? And one of the people that Lamont may have been going to play basketball with was a man by the name of Thomas.
As they process the events of August 8th, Lamont's family have grown suspicious of the friend who invited him to play ball that afternoon.
My brother did not leave the house thinking that he was going to die that day. Thomas told Lamont, let's go play basketball. People were going around saying that Thomas set it up, which we felt that way anyway, because it was just too coincidental that you call him and tell him to come up and play.
Rumors suggest that Thomas may have coordinated with the gunman to get Lamont to Gregg Street.
If anyone were able to call him somewhere, it would be Thomas because he trusted him.
The indication was that he was plotting to do this to Lamont. There were rumors. He knew that it was happening and they helped facilitate it.
Lamont's family have tipped off investigators to a friend who may have been involved in the murder.
Thomas was somebody who was on scene at the time of the murder. Detectives were looking at him as possibly being involved, or at least not telling what he really knew about him.
Thomas was one of the first names that I gave to the detectives. He was the one who made the call for him to come up there. He was the one who got him to come out of the house. He was the one who put Lamont in a location to be a victim of this murder.
Police actually interviewed Thomas. He came into the station and they interviewed him there to determine whether he might have been involved or what he knew.
Investigators begin by questioning Thomas about his plans for that day.
So when police talked to him, he's very quiet, trying to figure things out. You can tell he's contemplative. He had not yet met with Lamont and didn't know anything that was useful. They just didn't get any information that was usable from Thomas.
Detectives then set out to validate his version of events.
We had 6 or 7 cell phone dumps that we went through. His phone was pulled, and there was no indication that he had anything to do with the murder of Lamont Adair.
They could tell that he called Lamont up to the scene. He was the one who made the call for him to come up there. But they didn't feel like he was involved.
After clearing Thomas, detectives gain access to the footage from the housing complex that could reveal Lamont's final moments.
So when police actually pull the footage of this video camera that's on the corner of one of the apartment buildings, it does a 360-degree pan. Every couple seconds, it starts to pan away into the back through an alley to another street and then back around to the front. And we have very small snippets of it because it's rotating the entire time.
Detectives then cue the tape up to the moment in question.
And at about 3:49, 3:50 that afternoon, you can see an individual who we know is Lamont Adair based on where he falls and where police find him. And then eventually you see a gray Toyota Corolla pull up. And that's when the driver's door opens and the driver jumps out of the vehicle and approaches Lamont Adair.
The video is chilling because you see the figure just fire, shooting in broad daylight, and you see Lamont get down to his knees and he's trying to fight, but he's just executed on the street in front of everybody.
And then the camera pans out of view.
When the camera returns to the scene, the final moments of the tragedy unfold.
After he had shot Lamont, he runs back to the driver's side. He can't get into the driver's side, and he hops to the back of the car. He gets in, and the car drives away. He couldn't identify any movement in the car, but we were able to determine that there was somebody else in the car at the time who was in the driver's seat because the car drove away with the defendant in the back.
We know there's another person who witnessed the shooting, a person who slid into the driver's seat and shut the door.
To me, this person who shot Lamont knew him. I mean, it was willful, deliberate, premeditated. They wanted Lamont Adair dead.
I am Aisha Braveboy, State's Attorney for Prince George's County, Maryland. Surveillance video can be extremely helpful in identifying suspects. In this case, however, it was very, very grainy, so it was very difficult to make out the features of the suspect.
You can tell that the driver who exited the car had dreads, was an African-American male. Beyond that, there was nothing in that video that could tell us who that was. It was a very small, common car, gray in color. There was nothing unique about it. There was no way to tell the license plate.
But upon rewatching Lamont's final moments, they observe someone else who may be able to identify the killer.
So the shooting takes place right here, but in the video you actually see this maintenance worker had pulled up to the main street where the defendant's car was traveling. But you saw in the video, they saw everything. And then initially when I reviewed this video, I said to John, like, let's get this maintenance worker in.
Days later, investigators bring this eyewitness in for questioning.
How you doing, sir? I do appreciate you coming and taking the time to talk to me. I'm sure you're busy and really don't want to be involved. I just want to get some basic information from you. And what do you do over there? On the day of the shooting, you remember that day? Yeah, I remember. Can you tell me what happened?
They just let them pull up in the car because he just come pull up, start shooting.
The person that was doing the shooting, can you describe the person at all?
Right. We missed them. Lamont's 27th birthday, baller for life, celebration of his life. This is Lamont's niece that he never met. She'll be a year old. All right, this month.
It's Calvin, a friend of mine too. Man, we miss you down here. You know, you want to live forever, be your family, real friends. Happy birthday, happy 27th birthday. We love you, miss you.
Happy birthday, Monty! 27th birthday!
Investigators are questioning a witness who observed Lamont Adair's final moments in hopes of identifying the shooter.
On the day of the shooting, you remember that day?
They just let them pull up in the car because he just come pull up, start shooting.
The person that was doing the shooting, can you describe the person at all?
I don't know the person who got shot. I don't know the one who shot.
Did you see someone get out of the car?
No.
No?
No.
Can't you describe anything about them?
No, because I'm scared. I don't look for nothing.
This maintenance worker, he didn't see anything.
You know, black, white, Asian.
No.
So it was a very frustrating, moment for us.
I appreciate you coming in to talk to me. I mean, of course, I wish you had more information, but I appreciate you.
The witness's failure to identify the shooter highlights a major challenge detectives are facing.
Sadly, there is an anti-snitching mentality for witnesses, and a lot of that probably is out of fear, and they've got to live with the people that may have been involved in the incident.
I understand the very real danger that people may feel if they do talk about cases. But in this particular case, it was so frustrating to see the number of people out, and nobody saw anything who could really tell us where to go.
In the face of community silence, Lamont's family decides to speak out.
The neighborhood didn't talk. So we got together as a family and we're like, well, we need to go up there and protest. We walked from the street where he was murdered all the way down to the rec center.
What do we want? Justice! When do we want it? Now!
The thing that mattered to me most was making sure someone opened their mouth enough to find out who did this to my brother.
Don't sit and hide behind the windows and curtains. Tell what you know. I said, today is my son, Lamont William Adair Jr. Tomorrow it could be your father, your brother, somebody you love, so you would want to tell what happened because you would want somebody to tell you what happened to your family member.
In the days following the protest, it's apparent that their message is getting through.
People had started inboxing me from seeing us on the news, from seeing us up there protesting, from us pleading with the community members to speak up.
The detectives fielded many reports from the family about what they had heard, who they heard it from, and the family was really active in trying to just find out information and funnel it to the detectives.
One rumor suggests that an incident in Lamont's past made him a target for revenge.
There were several rumors. One of them was that he was possibly a snitch for the police. That was basically that came up because he had recently, prior to this, had acquired a weed charge where he was found in a car smoking some weed.
Like most of the kids his age, Lamont has started recreational use of like marijuana. I think that's the way that he, detached from his issues or problems. And he had gotten into some trouble, and they arrested him.
It seems that after the arrest, some individuals may have viewed Lamont with suspicion.
I don't believe he was in jail for very long when he had been arrested for that. And certainly some of the rumors that circulate is that if you're out quickly, that you must be working with the police. And I guess the phrase everybody uses is the streets are talking. And so some of the original rumors that went around were that potential suspects could be people who weren't happy about that.
Detectives reach out to their partners in the narcotics unit.
It wasn't a big charge. There would be no reason for him to want to subject himself to the dangers of becoming a snitch to work off a weed charge.
We had no knowledge that he had been working with police on anything.
Lamont didn't tell on anybody. He took the charge, and then he put that moment behind him, and he moved forward. Like that little scare turned his life around.
It's another dead end. But then, a friend of Lamont approaches police, claiming she has knowledge about the gunman seen on the surveillance video.
Do you want something to drink real quick while I get my stuff?
No, I'm fine.
State your full name, please.
Kenya had asked to talk to the detectives in charge of the case because she believed she had some information about who had done it. And that's when the case really got started.
Detectives begin by asking Kenya about her connection to Lamont.
He's been over my house, but Lamont has been my friend for so long, I would never do anything to put him in any type of harm's way.
So, explain to me, you said you believe you know a motive.
Kenya then reveals something that she previously kept secret. She and Lamont were more than just friends.
So I'm not denying that Lamont and I had anything going on.
When did you start sleeping with Lamont?
We didn't start sleeping together until like June. And that's why I'm coming here.
According to Kenya, the relationship with Lamont pushed her ex over the edge.
What makes you think that, because of everything else going on between you and him, that he would go and kill Lamont?
I really feel like he did. He's hot-headed. He gets angry. He's a loose cannon. I feel like he did it just because of the situation. I'm worried that if he did do it, he might come after me.
Well, what would make you think he would do it?
He told me he would kill me.
On August 10th, 2018, a woman named Kenya tells investigators that her ex, Franklin Scott, may have killed Lamont Adair.
She wanted the police to know that she and Franklin Scott had a pretty tumultuous relationship consisting of several protective orders, but also 2 young children. So they were on again, off again. I believe there was allegations that he had tased her. So there was definitely a rocky relationship there. That relationship officially ended in the beginning of May of 2018.
Because he's seen that Lamont was so supportive of me. He hopped into my Snapchat and he's seen how often Lamont and I were together.
Franklin Scott was clearly obsessed with Lamont Adair and the relationship that Lamont had had with Kenya.
Frank is short. He's like 5'3", and he's always self-conscious about that. Like, you don't want me because I'm small, I'm short, you want to tall. It's so messed up that you just moved on with a basketball player.
He lost it, knowing that she ran to basically his worst nightmare, a talented, tall, good-looking guy.
It makes me cry, but I really feel like he did it.
Then she offers more details that increase the detective's interest.
What's he look like?
He's short. He's about 5'3". He has dreads.
What kind of hair does he have?
He has dreads, long dreads.
How long are they?
Maybe like
Down there?
Yeah.
He had long dreads. He matched the physical description of the person who conducted the shooting. Franklin Scott did have a prior firearms charge, so we knew from that he had access to weapons. So that also was something that we were looking at as important.
When they ask Kenya what type of vehicle he drives, she says that he used to drive a BMW and that was in the shop. She mentions that she believes he's been driving a rental vehicle, possibly a gray Toyota.
The same type of car observed in the surveillance video. Investigators then ask about her contact with Scott on August 8th.
She told police that she received a phone call from Franklin Scott the day of the murder. She was at work at the time.
He was in the car driving when I was speaking to him.
Do you remember hearing any voices? Anybody else that could have been with him?
It was somebody else with him. He has I know his voice is kind of deep but high at the same time.
She said she recognized that voice to be Elijah Wan Jackson because his voice is characteristically raspy.
It was O.J. Jackson. He had a nickname of O.J. the Shooter. He had a prior record as well.
If you had to leave right now and go find him, where would you go?
I don't know. Mom, maybe at OJ's house.
At the time, the detectives were looking everywhere for him. They put out feelers everywhere trying to track him down. But after the murder, they were already gone.
To narrow the search, they continue to focus on the vehicle spotted in the video.
It's not until Kenya kind of comes out and we find out that the suspect rented a vehicle. She mentions a gray Toyota. Eventually, they do locate the rental vehicle, parked on a street in the Seat Pleasant area.
After the murder, Franklin Scott basically parked the Corolla and walked off.
A search of the car reveals bullet fragments inside. But there's no sign of the murder weapon. Then, in their quest to locate Scott, investigators recall a detail from his criminal past.
They knew that he had to report for his pending gun charge in Anne Arundel County.
Well, one of the detectives realized that Mr. Scott had a court date. And so on August 23rd, Prince George's County Police Department were sitting on the Anne Arundel County Courthouse in Glen Burnie, Maryland, waiting for Mr. Scott to show up for his court date. And it was then that they arrested him for the murder of Lamont Adair.
If he had thought that Kenya would be likely to talk, I think he wouldn't have set foot in that courthouse.
He's taken to the Criminal Investigation Division for the Prince George's County Police Department, and he asks for a lawyer, so the police never get a chance to speak to him.
Eager to collect more evidence against Scott, detectives begin monitoring his phone calls from prison.
Within the week that he was arrested, he had made some jail calls asking his acquaintance to help him get rid of his babies, which the detectives were able to determine he was talking about his guns.
Locating the weapon used in the murder would bolster the prosecution's case.
Unfortunately, they listened to the jail calls a couple days after they were made, so by the time they were able to get a search warrant and search the house, there was no indication of any firearms there.
The failure to find the weapon is a blow to the investigation.
What we had at that time was not enough. It was enough for probable cause, which got Franklin Scott to be arrested, but it wasn't enough to find him guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. We knew we needed somebody involved in that moment to be able to be in court and point at Franklin Scott and say he's the one who shot repeatedly at Lamont Adair and killed him.
That man is Elijah Jackson.
If we wanted who was truly responsible for this, we had to find him. So police immediately zeroed in to track him down.
To bring the killer of Lamont Adair to justice, investigators must track down his suspected accomplice, O.J. Jackson.
I had been watching social media, and OJ was traveling. He would go to Texas or Florida, I think it was, come back. Like, he's active on his social media page.
But 16 days after the homicide, police get word that Jackson has returned to the Seat Pleasant area.
On August 24th, police find Elijah Jackson at his home, and that's when they bring him in to interview him about his involvement.
They interviewed him pretty extensively for a couple hours. At the end of the interview, he got real quiet, and the detectives asked him something, and he indicated that he wanted to talk to his mother. And his mother came in, and you saw a pretty profound exchange.
His mother tells him, you need to tell the police the truth. You don't need to be going down for this. You need to be honest.
Elijah Jackson is finally ready to provide a first-hand account of the tragic events captured by the security camera.
He made it sound like he bumped into Franklin Scott as he was walking. I think that Franklin Scott picked him up.
He hears Franklin Scott say, there he goes. The car slows down, pulls a gun out of the driver's side door. Handle shoots out the window a few times, opens the door, and jumps out of the car. And he says the car keeps going. And then he jumps over into the driver's seat and put the brake on.
Then Jackson observed Lamont's final moment.
Scott is standing over Lamont Adair and firing. I think it all happened so fast, and it was a surprise to OJ. OJ Jackson just wanted to get out of Dodge.
OJ indicated that he was not expecting it. However, he did get into the front driver's side seat. He was ultimately charged with accessory after the fact.
Franklin Scott accepted responsibility for what he did as well, and primarily because he knew that Elijah Jackson was going to offer testimony against him.
Franklin Scott pled guilty to first-degree murder. I'm pretty proud of that. It's a more certain outcome than going to trial. So I'm happy with the results.
Elijah Jackson is serving a 6-year sentence. Franklin Scott is serving 50 years.
The heartbreaking part about it was, if I recall correctly, the mothers knew each other from the neighborhood. That was a really profound thing to sit and observe.
I mean, I know Franklin's mother, but I hadn't seen Franklin in a long time, so I couldn't identify him from a cracked egg. I walked over, I said, how you doing? And she just started shaking and crying. My son was the one who killed your son. Of course, me, I hug her. And my kids are like, Mom, why are you hugging her? And I felt one mother to another. You know, my son is dead. Yours going away for 50 years. It's like he almost dead. But told him, I said, I have to forgive you for the God in me, but I'll never forget what you have stole from my family, me and my family. You took something very dear from us. Lamont, Tree, Monty. You had no right to do that. You weren't God, but you tried to play God that day.
With the murder case resolved, the family continues to process their grief and replay Lamont's final moments.
Makai had just started walking right before Lamont passed. He shows me the phone, and I'm just like trying to hold back the tears. I had a feeling about Lamont, like it was the last time I was going to see him. It was very weird When I think about it and how I felt like I had to just let him go because I was getting teary-eyed, and that was the last time I saw Lamont. Him sharing a moment from Makai being able to walk.
I wish I had offered him a ride that day. It's a lot of things you look at and you're like, you could have done differently, but yeah. No, I just, like, I think about him all the time.
You know, Lamont knew we loved him, and he loved us. And at the end of the day, nothing else matters. Go ahead.
When you look at it, the person touches like so many people, and it's disappointing because he had a bright future ahead of him.
I'm just proud of him for the man that he was and who he was trying to become, you know, for his family.
Gone too soon. Very, very hard.
We were supposed to go out to eat. So she goes, let's do it after New Year's because we don't want to be outside these clowns when they're acting up during New Year's.
We can see this person go to Jamie's apartment and then is seen again exiting. His sweatshirt was blood-soaked.
It looked like a pretty brutal fight had taken place in that bedroom.
How could this have happened? They didn't have any answers for me.
We thought it was unlikely that it was a random act of violence.
We pull up Jamie's Facebook and see if she's friends with this guy. And she was. You wonder what his mindset is, what's he capable of.
New Year's Eve, 2016. Sioux Falls, South Dakota. 28-year-old Jamie Wounded Arrow is looking forward to an exciting new year. She's got a new home and big plans.
She had gotten her own apartment. She had gotten this job, and she loved it. She was proud of the fact that she did all of this stuff on her own. It kind of gave her that confidence, like, I can do this. Now I wonder how much more I can do.
Born on the Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota and a member of the Oglala Lakota tribe, Jamie is the youngest of 8 children.
When Jamie was born, there was a lot of us in the family always trying to hold Jamie, always trying to be with Jamie.
She was a complete mama's girl. She loved her mom.
That bond that Jamie and my mom had together was unbreakable.
Jamie has always been proud of her Native American heritage, and it is a central part of her identity.
Being Oglala Lakota was like everything for her. There was like a sense of freedom, and I saw that from her.
And there's another part of Jamie's identity that she's proud of. Though her assigned sex at birth was male, she has always identified as female.
Jamie started to know that she was transgender and never hid that from day one. Especially how she would dress, the makeup, the way she carried herself, and into the schools. None of that was hidden. My mom would help Jamie and they would get through things together. My mom was always there for Jamie.
In some Native American cultures, the term used to describe a transgender person is two-spirited.
It's pretty much used everywhere now as the Native American community. If you're LGBT, this is what you are. It's just something that we're born with. This is how we walk. We walk both worlds.
While Jamie was accepted by her own family, others on the reservation weren't as open-minded.
Jamie had a heavy weight on her due to being transgender. The negativity that was going around and what Jamie had to go against.
She used to tell us stories about how she was picked on, and she really didn't seem like she could be herself.
In high school, the emotional toll drives Jamie to drug and alcohol abuse.
There were some struggles that Jamie had, and those are the things that I think Jamie used as a coping mechanism for that. But as time went on, Jamie started to find herself in a positive way.
When Jamie is 26, she decides to leave the reservation in search of a more supportive community and to start working on her sobriety. She moves to Sioux Falls.
Of just watching out for each other.
Now in 2016, Jamie has hit the 2-year mark of sobriety and feels she is finally in control of her future. She lands her dream job as a telemarketer, where she gets to connect with people from all walks of life.
She had gotten this job that it was 5-star call center here. She loved it. And she actually sat and told me, she goes, "Sister, I feel like I'm good. I finally feel like I'm good now, in a good place."
On New Year's Eve 2016, Jamie opts for a quiet night at home after picking up some takeout.
Jamie and I spoke over the phone. We were supposed to go out to eat. So she goes, "All right, well, let's do it after New Year's because we don't want to be outside with these clowns when they're acting up during New Year's." And I said, "Okay, yeah, we'll do it."
At 8:30 p.m., she settles in for the evening.
Jamie had posted a meme of Marge Simpson laid out in a bed, obviously sleeping. And Jamie posted it in a joking kind of way, indicating that although she knew most of her friends would be out partying that night, she had no intention of doing so.
And Jamie's sending out some text messages to family and friends that said, "Happy New Year."
Her loved ones don't know it is the final time they will ever hear from her. As the new year begins, Jamie grows uncharacteristically quiet. No calls, no emails, no texts, no online posts.
When Jamie initially stopped communicating using her cell phone, her friends didn't reach out to law enforcement initially, perhaps out of a desire to give their friends some privacy.
On January 6th, Sioux Falls police respond to a call for a wellness check at an apartment near the city center.
The apartment manager called law enforcement after she had received some type of complaint from a tenant.
I was at home in bed, got a call. A young lady was walking down the hallway and she could smell something.
When patrol officers arrive, they knock on the door of the apartment that seems to be the source of the odor. The landlord provides them with the tenant's name. Jamie Wounded Arrow? There's no answer, so they force their way in.
Nothing seemed to be in disarray in either the living room or the kitchen, but that was a different story once you entered the bedroom. You immediately noticed blood all over the walls, on the ceilings.
There were smear marks. The bedding was all over the place and full of blood. The floor was full of blood.
It looked like a pretty brutal fight had taken place in that bedroom.
Given the condition of the scene, the patrol officers call in the homicide squad. Detectives quickly arrive and continue searching through the apartment.
The closet doors were the type that slide back and forth, and they had been broken off of the hinges.
In the closet was Jamie. On her back, she'd been secreted in that closet. Her shirt was pulled up, and I could see what appeared to me to be stab wounds to her chest. Jamie's body's obviously in a state of decomposition. What's going through my head is that we are way behind. Everyone talks about the first 48. We're way beyond that. We're way past 4 or 5 days. We have homicides that are pretty much cut and dry, but it was apparent to me that this would be a whodunit.
Investigators follow a dark trail of clues left by a killer.
The knife was found in the bedroom. There was blood on it.
Our coroner had no problem saying that he believed that that was the murder weapon. When you're looking at video and you see someone enter, and when he exits, he's blood-soaked, you start to key in on that.
And find themselves in a race against the clock.
Anytime you have, especially a homicide suspect who's on the run, who's also on the run from parole, you still wonder what his mindset is. Is this an isolated incident? What's he capable of?
Sioux Falls police have discovered the body of Jamie Wounded Arrow, stabbed to death in a closet in her apartment. They believe she has been dead for several days.
The body is speaking to you, and it's saying a lot. I had some questions in regards to how Jamie's shirt was when she was stabbed. We pulled her shirt back down, and we could match the stab wounds on her chest to the rips in the fabric. So that helps to tell the story that her shirt was down when she was attacked. I believe he just attempted to secret her in the closet. When he pulls her by the shirt to get her in the closet, the shirt comes up around her neck.
As they wait for the coroner to arrive, detectives turn to the rest of Jamie's apartment, searching for any clues.
So in this crime scene, you're looking for things that are there, and more importantly, things that aren't there. Her phone isn't there. There's no purse there. It's apparent that somebody has left with these things.
Although these items are missing, detectives don't see any signs of a break-in. As they continue to scour her apartment, they discover what they believe could be the murder weapon.
The knife was found in the bedroom. There was blood on it. Jamie's body sustained 7 stab wounds, all of which were consistent with a 3.5 to 4 inch blade of a kitchen knife.
That knife was bagged, sent into the lab for forensic testing. Our coroner had no problem saying that he believed that that was the murder weapon.
With a killer on the loose, investigators know they must move quickly.
Jamie's phone was missing. Obviously, that becomes a major focus with some of the investigators that I've tasked to find her phone. So there are subpoenas being written, search warrants, everything we can do possible to find the phone. The other huge thing in today's day and age is video.
Jamie's apartment complex had surveillance cameras stationed at various locations on the property, near the entrances and exits to the buildings themselves.
You're literally praying that these cameras are functional. So there's phone calls being made to management to have them save and preserve all that videotape.
While they wait to get the video, detectives are faced with the difficult task of contacting Jamie's family.
When I had gotten that call, I just asked why. Why has this happened? And how could this have happened? They didn't have any answers for me. Then I let my mom know. And that was hard to relay that information to her because she had dementia. It brought tears to our eyes because it was devastating. It was unreal. It was heartbreaking.
When I got the news, it was a big shock, a huge shock for us. How did this happen?
News of the murder of a Native American transgender woman brutally stabbed in her own home quickly spreads.
It's unusual. It is still headline news when a murder happens in Sioux Falls. So the fact that it happened on New Year's Eve to a member of the trans community was a really big deal. They wanted to make sure a killer was brought to justice.
In search of answers, detectives begin questioning Jamie's neighbors.
It was a huge apartment complex. I'd say probably 1,000 people living there.
It seemed to be a place where people kept to themselves, people minded their own business, and so it wouldn't be unusual for a tenant to not be seen by his or her neighbors for a number of days.
But you can't discount someone in the building having knowledge and potentially being involved. So we talked to all of them just to find if they were witnesses, and the canvas ended up revealing really nothing. Nobody heard anything.
Detectives also look for clues in Jamie's cell phone records and activity on social media. It ends with her post at 11:08 p.m. on New Year's Eve.
There was nothing there. This is the last communication she has. There is no usage of her phone, no private messages or DMs.
Meanwhile, investigators get the answer they are hoping for regarding the apartment complex's security cameras. They were working, and the video is available.
Detectives immediately retrieve the video, and they start to pick it apart.
It's a situation where you're waiting with bated breath to see, is our perpetrator going to show himself to us?
Sioux Falls detectives are pouring through security footage from Jamie Wounded Arrow's apartment complex frame by frame, hoping to find clues about what happened in her final moments.
You have to watch every second of it because you don't know what's going to be missed.
The video shows Jamie arriving home at 8:30 p.m. on New Year's Eve. The investigators don't see anything unusual in the footage after that, until several hours later.
We had surveillance footage that showed a person arriving to her apartment complex at around 3:30 in the morning.
About 2 minutes after that, you see him walk back and out the apartment complex. About a minute or two later, he reappears and comes back to the entry of the apartment complex, walks down the stairs to what is Jamie's apartment, and then is seen again an hour and 10 minutes later exiting the apartment complex.
Investigators believe they are looking at Jamie's killer. He is the only person seen on surveillance during the window of time in which Jamie was murdered.
It was like hitting a jackpot. You can't believe how lucky you are, how lucky that the cameras were recording, that the footage was still there, that it captured our suspect.
But the video doesn't give the investigators a clear look at the man's face. Still, what they see leads them to believe this is possibly someone who Jamie knows.
The suspect knocked on the door for a significant amount of time, received no response. He walked out, walked around the apartment complex, banged on her window, woke her up. He came back in, and she let him in the house. It's highly unlikely that he's a stranger.
When he arrived to Jamie's apartment, he was wearing basketball shorts, sneakers, and a sweatshirt. His appearance changed when he came out of Jamie's apartment sometime after 4:40 in the morning.
What they see next convinces detectives they are indeed looking at Jamie's killer.
And you could read that this was a sweatshirt that said Peabody Energy on it. And it appeared to me that the sweatshirt was bloody. I'd go so far as to say blood-soaked. But when you're looking at video and you see someone enter and when he exits he's blood-soaked, you start to key in on that.
Then we see him walk over to a hill with kind of a grove of trees, and he starts throwing things into this little ravine, and then he disappears from view.
Officers rush to the ravine behind the apartment complex and begin searching the area.
We found Jamie's clutch purse with Jamie's ID and social security card in it, and a debit card. There was no money in it. We don't know if he had taken money out of it, but he certainly had not taken the debit card out of it.
As they investigate, detectives also ponder potential motives for the vicious attack.
In my mind, there was some motive besides robbery. We thought it was unlikely that it was a random act of violence, given that we had seen the perpetrator's behavior on the surveillance footage, and he appeared to know his victim. Investigators wondered whether Jamie's status as a trans female was a motive here. It certainly could have been, so we had to look at it as if it was potentially a hate crime.
I remember on the news they kept saying, she's now the second or third transgender woman in the United States to be killed on New Year's. It was a shock.
Searching for any evidence to support that possibility or point to a different motive for this murder, detectives begin a deep dive into Jamie's background. They quickly uncover some troubling information about her past.
She battled addiction. She had had some run-ins with the criminal justice system. So she had a lot of struggles. She was battling through them and doing the best that she could.
The investigators learned that Jamie's struggles included a conviction for drug possession. As a result, the court had ordered her into a treatment program.
She had been to the Arch, which is a halfway house in Sioux Falls. A halfway house means you're coming out of incarceration and they're trying to blend you back into society. There's AA meetings. There's any number of things that are geared to get a person who's in that system back out into society. But I knew from our investigation that while she was at the Arch, she came into contact with many felons.
We know that sometimes people who are in treatment use the connections they make at those facilities for good, as we believe Jamie did. We also know people often use those connections for bad. There were a number of red flags raised.
homicide detectives wonder if someone Jamie Wounded Era met during her stay at a halfway house might have been involved in her murder. Looking for any connection, they examined the data from Jamie's missing cell phone, and they find something unexpected.
We learned that 2 calls had been placed after the time the likely perpetrator had left Jamie's apartment. She had already been killed. So we knew it wasn't her using the phone. It had to be the killer. Law enforcement was able to determine that the first call was in this dial.
We could see through the records we got a hold of this gentleman who had nothing to do with the case.
After the wrong number, the records show the second call from Jamie's phone came at around 5 a.m. on New Year's Day to a woman named Brianna White Butterfly.
She told investigators the call had been placed to her from her boyfriend. She identified him by name, Joshua LeClaire. She indicated to law enforcement that she had been with him earlier in the night on New Year's Eve, and that he'd left at some point that night.
They had argued, he was drunk, and he had left the house, and he did not have a phone. And she was wondering whose phone he was using to call her in the early morning hours.
We learned Joshua LeClaire is a Native American man who was raised on the Pine Ridge Reservation and in Rapid City, South Dakota. He also had a conviction for first-degree burglary from 2011. He was sent to prison for that. He was released on parole in 2016, but absconded, meaning he disappeared, ceased communications with his parole officer, and had a warrant out for his arrest at the time Jamie died.
Joshua LeClaire is now the prime suspect in Jamie's murder. And as detectives dig further into his past, they find a clear connection between him and Jamie.
Joshua and Jamie knew each other. We know they had contact together at the Arch in Sioux Falls when both of them were going through treatment.
There's obviously a connection there. So we pull up Jamie's Facebook and see if she's friends with this guy. And she was.
We know that they had some communications, though we're not sure of the extent of their relationship and what it all entailed.
Investigators hope Jamie's family can fill in some blanks about the relationship.
It started out as far as Jamie helping with money with $20 here and $20 here. And I don't know if there was a relationship there or what, but it had started because he was there also at the Arch.
While Joshua LeClaire does seem to resemble the man in the security video, the footage is grainy, and detectives have no physical evidence linking him to the murder, or a motive for him to have killed someone who appears to be a friend.
There was no evidence to show that Josh held any ill will towards her. None of this makes sense.
The investigators are ready to confront Joshua to see if he can clear things up.
We immediately put out what we call a BOLO, or be on the lookout, for Josh.
As they search for him, detectives also track down his friends and press them for leads on his whereabouts.
Law enforcement started with Joshua's immediate circle, his girlfriend, friends who knew him, perhaps friends who had spent time with him in the days leading up to Jamie's murder. That led them to one of Joshua's friends who had spent time with him on New Year's Eve.
The friend, Roscoe Poorbear, has an unexpected and stunning story to tell.
Roscoe Poorbear told law enforcement he had in fact been with Joshua on the early morning hours of New Year's Day. Roscoe noticed that Joshua was wearing a bloody sweatshirt and saw Joshua throw the sweatshirt into a dumpster at a construction site. They were able to go to the construction site, and they found the sweatshirt just where Roscoe said it would be.
The bloody sweatshirt appears to be the same one worn by the man in the surveillance video from Jamie's apartment complex.
To be able to see the logo of that sweatshirt on the camera, to find that sweatshirt in a dumpster when a witness had said, this is where Joshua Clare threw this sweatshirt. That was a very important part of the case, to see that.
As they send the sweatshirt to the forensics lab for testing, police also send the search for Joshua LeClaire into high gear.
At this point, efforts to locate Joshua are ramping up significantly, with statewide law enforcement to check all corners of the state for locations Joshua may possibly be. The concern was, has he fled?
Anytime you have, especially a homicide suspect who's on the run, who's also on the run from parole, you still wonder what his mindset is. Is this an isolated incident? What's he capable of?
A search is underway in South Dakota for Joshua LeClaire, the prime suspect in the murder of Jamie Wounded Arrow. He's been on the run for 2 days, and investigators have no leads to where he could be hiding. Until Sioux Falls police respond to a routine call for help.
Local law enforcement were called to a report of an intoxicated person. They thought this was a call of a drunken, disorderly person who needed to go to detox. Police show up, and initially they don't know who they're speaking to because the man gives them a false name.
He lied about who he was. Patrol officers didn't know going in that they were dealing with Josh LeClaire.
But once the officers arrest him for creating a public disturbance, they discover his true identity. Homicide detectives rush to the station to interrogate him about Jamie's murder.
When Detective Bakke got Joshua into the interview room, he was intoxicated, and Detective Bakke knew that he had to buy himself some time. He offered Joshua coffee, offered him cigarettes in an effort to help him sober up.
As soon as the detective sits down with his suspect, something catches his eye.
Joshua had a significant laceration on his palm.
We knew, based on the nature of Jamie's wounds, that the kitchen knife was the murder weapon. And Joshua LeClaire's injury was consistent with using a knife to stab another person. Detective Bakke smartly didn't mention it for a number of hours. It was there, he saw it, and he waited for the right opportunity to talk to Joshua about it.
You come and confront him, there's going to be an immediate denial. It's human nature, and it's getting by that denial. It's working around that denial and getting to the truth. That's what takes time. He didn't ever deny knowing Jamie. He didn't deny going to her apartment. He simply used the excuse that he was blackout drunk and could only remember bits and pieces of why he was there and what had happened during the interaction.
But Detective Bakke continues to press him harder and harder.
We started to broach the fact that he was in the apartment and there was a fight.
Joshua said that he and Jamie had argued over a pair of shoes, but Joshua's excuse didn't make sense. The brutality of her murder was not consistent with an argument over shoes.
As I began to press a bit, Josh eventually did say that he got the cut on his hand from stabbing Jamie.
This was a confession. This meant, on top of all of the other evidence we had to that point, we had an admission: he is the killer.
The evidence in this case, it was stacked.
We had surveillance footage showing Joshua LeClaire had been to Jamie's apartment. We saw him on video throwing items of Jamie's into the ravine. We knew he had an injury to his hand, which could only have been caused by stabbing someone repeatedly and the knife sliding up his palm. We knew from Roscoe Poorbear that Joshua had the same sweatshirt we saw him wearing at Jamie's apartment, only when Roscoe saw it, it was bloody.
And when the lab results come in, they show the blood on the sweatshirt matches both Joshua LeClaire and Jamie Wounded Arrow.
All of that, along with Joshua's confession, left no doubt in anyone's mind that he was the killer. We don't know if Joshua panicked after he killed Jamie. He did some things which seem counterintuitive. He left the knife, he took her IDs, but left his blood.
To a casual observer, someone who watches crime show TVs, they would question, why would the suspect do that? Well, the biggest factor, in my opinion, is that this person's never killed before. It doesn't make sense because it can't make sense.
What we do know is that he did enough in his mind to try to avoid getting caught.
On January 8th, 2017, Sioux Falls police charged Joshua LeClaire with first-degree murder for the stabbing death of Jamie Wounded Arrow. But even after a long interrogation, investigators still don't know his motive or what happened to Jamie in her final moments.
In regards to the transgender portion of this case and potential hate crime, it simply wasn't there.
In my opinion, the brutality of the crime certainly indicated that Joshua knew Jamie and that he was motivated by some sense of hatred, even if not necessarily based on her status as a trans woman. We don't know if he made advances toward her that were rejected or a drunken fight of some sort, an argument. Just the viciousness of the attack signaled to me that there was something deeper beyond just a casual acquaintanceship.
Faced with the overwhelming evidence against him, Joshua LeClaire pleads guilty. But before the court can hold a sentencing hearing, the confessed killer drops a bombshell.
At his pre-sentencing interview, Joshua LeClaire gave information that changed everything.
Joshua LeClaire has pleaded guilty to stabbing Jamie Wounded Arrow to death in her Sioux Falls apartment. He's never said why he did it, but before he can be sentenced, he makes a stunning claim.
He told the investigator that there had been a sexual advance made towards him and Jamie had grabbed a knife and he had defended himself.
At first, he said there was an argument over shoes. It wasn't until his sentencing was looming that he said Jamie had made a sexual advance toward him, that he felt threatened by it, and he stabbed her in self-defense. It was offensive, frankly, to have Joshua try to shame Jamie in this way. There were no indications that she had made any advances toward him.
I don't believe it to be true in any way, shape, or form. I believe that's a person who's at the end of the road and is about to be sentenced is going to say anything.
The only person here who had defensive wounds to her hands and her forearms was Jamie, whereas Joshua had none of that. The only wound Joshua had was the injury to his palm, which was as a direct result of stabbing Jamie so many times. At this point, we felt Joshua LeClaire was kind of like an animal backed into a corner. It's not unusual for defendants to shame the victim before sentencing. At the same time, we had to wonder whether the sentencing judge would consider it as true.
The answer comes on June 26, 2018, when Joshua LeClaire appears in court for his sentencing hearing.
Joshua asked for a lenient sentence, but he spoke about Jamie in the abstract as if he didn't know her. He said something to the effect of, "No one deserves to be killed this way." When he was the one who did it, it showed a remarkable sense of selfishness and a lack of true remorse.
I just remember being there, and I remember seeing him. And I just kind of looked over like this, and I remember it was like, it was real.
When it's somebody that you love, it's anger, it's sadness, it's a lot of emotions. And in my statement there, I did mention that he should rot in prison too.
The judge rejects the claim of self-defense and sentences 27-year-old Joshua LeClaire to 65 years in prison,
making him an old man by the time he gets out. It is, for all intents and purposes, a life sentence for him.
This individual that took our sister's life, our baby sister's life, he got, what was given to him. So that was a tough thing to do, to be sitting in front of that male who did that. I think I cried for, I felt like forever.
For Jamie's loved ones, the outcome is bittersweet.
They were overjoyed that justice had been done, in spite of what had been done to Jamie. But there was a sense of dissatisfaction in that Joshua never really told the whole story. And we'll probably never know the real reason he was there and what happened between them.
I really miss seeing how happy she was when she started accomplishing some of her goals. A sense of happiness. Yes, I did it.
There's a lot of what ifs with Jamie's life being cut short and my mom having dementia. It wasn't just that one time that I had to break the story to her. It was every time that I went to go visit her. I would have to tell her each time that it was Jamie that was gone. And each time that brought tears to her eyes. And we have to relive it. People who go through this have to have strength within yourself to continue on, to live your life also, to live for them.
She's walking at a quick pace. You can tell that she's comfortable with nobody behind her. And within minutes, she has vanished into thin air.
I said, "What do you mean they can't find her?"
Her mother, Dawn, left Rochester for Myrtle Beach
after Brittany disappeared.
Helicopters, ATVs, horseback.
I saw what it was like to lose a child.
I had to find my daughter, and I wasn't going to stop until I got answers.
April 2009. Brittany Drexel, a 17-year-old high school junior, is living life to the fullest as an outgoing young woman in her hometown of Rochester, New York.
Brittany was just an awesome kid. Very happy, carefree. She was very popular in school. Everybody just loved her.
We met through some mutual friends. Started hanging out like normal teenagers. She just loved going and doing things. She wasn't somebody that liked to sit still.
When she was younger, Brittany was very sassy. Loved to perform in front of people. She used to sing, and she would put on shows for us in the backyard. She was a great kid.
When Brittany turned 7, the Drexel family welcomes another child, Marissa.
When Marissa came along, she was very excited to have a little sister, and she was like a second mom. She would always help me. She would want to hold her all the time. She would want to feed her and play with her, and she loved being a big sister.
We had that bond where we could just lay and talk about things, or we could have those mother-like-daughter talks with each other, and she was always there when I needed her.
6 years after Marissa was born, Camden came along, and Brittany was a lot older. Like, Camden was her baby. Like, she just adored Camden.
My sister was a social butterfly. She had millions, billions of friends. She was full of energy. She was a spitfire. She was full of, I don't know what word I want to use. She was full of life.
That year, Brittany starts dating her first real boyfriend, a classmate named John Greco.
When we first met him, he had come over to the house because he wanted Brittany to go to prom with him. You know, she was going on 16, and we'd said, sure, bring him over, you know, we'll meet him and stuff. John came from a great family. His parents are super nice, and Brittany adored him.
She had a lot of big dreams and goals. She wanted to move out of Rochester. That was a huge thing.
My sister was into fashion.
Brittany liked making clothes. She had quite a few drawings. She would dye jeans with bleach, and her friends would buy them and stuff, and she also wanted to model. She said, I'm gonna have 6 kids, and my husband's gonna stay home with them, and I'm gonna go to work. And I'm like, yeah, good luck with that.
When Brittany is in her junior year, her parents decide to divorce. It throws her into a tailspin.
She was upset about the divorce going on. It hurt, and of course, as a child, you're going through emotions, and, there was a lot of emotion there.
It took a while for Brittany to come down when she was angry, to come down from it. There was a lot going on at that time, and a lot of her schoolwork was falling behind, and so Brittany had asked about going to Myrtle Beach.
Spring break here, everyone leaves. It's either still really cold, wintry, or it's rain and blow me out. Myrtle Beach was a party scene. big city for teenagers who want to go out and have fun, or people in their young adulthood.
I told her, I said, Brittany, I don't think that's a good idea. I said, I want you to get caught up in your schoolwork. She's like, well, Mom, I want to go. I want to go to Myrtle Beach. And I just told her, you're not going. And she goes, why, Mom? I said, you're not going to Myrtle Beach. I said, there's no parental supervision. I said, I don't know the kid you're going with. And I said, something's going to happen to you. And Brittany said, Mom, nothing's going to happen to me. I'll be fine. And I said, well, Brittany, you're not going. So about an hour later, she said, Mom, since it's my spring break, can I go stay at my friend's house? And I told her it was okay for her to stay there.
On the night of April 22nd, 2009, unbeknownst to her family, Brittany and two classmates, Alana and Jennifer, began a 13-hour drive to Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
I had called her and I said, Britt, what are you doing? And she's like, well, I'm going to go to my friend's house. We're going to watch a movie or whatever. And she says, I love you. And I told her, I said, I love you too.
Me and my mom thought she was here, but in reality, she wasn't. I told her I missed her. And then I said, wait, before you hang up, I want to say goodbye, I love you, one more time. It's the last time I heard her voice.
With her family still none the wiser, the girls arrive at the resort town on the morning of April 23rd. But as her sister will later learn, after 2 days at the beach, Brittany's spring break isn't going as planned.
She was texting John. John couldn't go because he was working, so he had to stay back. But John knew the whole time.
On Saturday evening, April 25th, Brittany texts John that she needs a break from the girls she traveled with.
The girls she went down with, I think, were a year or two older than her. And because they're girls, they're young teenage girls, and they were fighting. She told John she felt alienated and alone. She wanted to come back home.
Brittany tells John that she ran into one of her classmates, Peter Brazowitz, and has decided to go visit him at his hotel. Around 9:15 p.m., Brittany abruptly stops texting John. It's unlike her, so he worriedly calls her family.
John said, Brittany's in Myrtle Beach and they can't find her. I said, what do you mean they can't find her? I was livid. I said, I can't believe she went to Myrtle Beach because she had never done that in the past, like lied to me or anything like that. John came to my house. We were calling the kids that were in Myrtle Beach. The girls wouldn't answer their phone. I kept calling Brittany's phone. And it would ring, and it would ring, and then it went directly to voicemail. Every time I called Peter answered the phone every single time. But he's like, I'm not her babysitter. And at that point, I said, we need to get in touch with Myrtle Beach Police Department.
Dawn calls the Myrtle Beach police to report Brittany is missing. But she doesn't stop there. She decides to drive to South Carolina herself.
My mom said, listen, you're going to go with your dad for a couple days. I have to go. And all of a sudden, I went to go look at my phone. There's a mass text sent out from John Greco. And it's my sister's picture and missing information. And I said, what is this? Then I started crying. I'm shocked that I'm like, Brittany's missing. I was in a state of shock.
We got everything together. I think we left about maybe 11 the next morning. And it was a long ride. My phone was blowing up with her friends. They're calling me, crying, screaming, where's Brittany? As soon as I would hang up, with someone, my phone would ring again. Like, all I knew is I had to find my daughter, and I wasn't going to stop until I got answers.
A mother embarks on a relentless quest.
I said, I'm done with the bull. I said, I want my daughter found.
While the police drill down on one suspect after another.
But I say you didn't, okay? I say you didn't about it.
There wasn't enough to arrest him. And he said, you're smart, you'll figure it out.
It felt like a roller coaster. You're just like, is she ever going to be found?
After learning that her daughter Brittany Drexel is missing in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, her mom, Dawn, immediately begins driving there from her home in upstate New York, 800 miles away.
So I get to Myrtle Beach, and I go to the police station.
But officers tell Dawn that with no evidence of a crime, there's little law enforcement can do. When she describes the argument she had with her daughter about spring break, they suggest that could be why Brittany isn't responding to calls and texts.
You've got bits of evidence that's saying she ran away from home, she rebelled against her mama, it's the day before she's supposed to go back, the idea that a young girl has just run away. But it is something that the police consider every time.
My mom knew my sister was not a runaway. No matter how much bad was going on in my sister's life at that point, she knew my sister wouldn't have ran away.
After failing to gain any traction with law enforcement, Dawn decides to take a different approach.
I go straight to the media. I went to Channel 13, and I said, my daughter's missing, I want to get her name and face out there.
Her mother, Dawn, left Rochester for Myrtle Beach after Brittany disappeared.
To feel, that you don't know where your child is. You don't know if they're alive. You don't know if they're hurt. It's horrible.
Figured I'd be able to find her, and I'd have her back in a couple days and we'd just go home. And we just started looking everywhere, like on Ocean Boulevard, and talking to people, seeing if people seen her, showed her picture, and we were putting posters up. So we did that probably for about a good solid week.
As Dawn continues to search, her media efforts catch the attention of the police and spurs them to action. Detectives begin by interviewing the last person Dawn believes saw Brittany on the night she vanished. Her classmate, Peter.
Peter was a little bit snarky, like, don't bother me. And the police were thinking, everybody wants to help. He doesn't want to be bothered. He said, I did know Brittany. I had met Brittany. We had hung out. We had texted back and forth, but I didn't have anything to do with her disappearance.
Peter claims that after Brittany left his hotel, he was hanging out with friends all night. While detectives check out his alibi, they also seek out anyone else known to have been in contact with Brittany in Myrtle Beach, including the girls she drove with from New York.
They went through each and every one of Brittany's friends for the short time that she was here, and they really scoured everything about them, and they were able to rule them out.
Peter's alibi also checks out.
He was able to show that everything that he was telling them was true.
But the investigation into Peter does lead detectives to a major discovery. His hotel, the Blue Water Resort, has surveillance cameras. And they captured images of Brittany on the evening of April 25th. Brittany enters the hotel at 8:33 p.m. and she appears again, exiting at 8:48 p.m.
As far as we knew, that was the last time that anybody had seen her. You can tell that she's walking at a fairly quick pace with nobody behind her. She's comfortable, but she's determined to get to wherever she is going.
It's just after leaving the hotel that Brittany exchanges her final texts with her boyfriend, John, at 8:58 p.m., expressing her desire to come home.
Within minutes, she has basically vanished into thin air.
Investigators request Brittany's cell phone records, hoping they might shed light on her whereabouts.
They did a tower dump back from the day that Brittany went missing on all of the cell towers.
The cell phone records arrive a week after Brittany's disappearance. At 11:57 on the night of April 25th, Brittany's phone pings near the North Santee River in McClellanville, a small town 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach. That's nearly 3 hours after the surveillance video shows Brittany leaving the Blue Water Hotel.
They started searching in a very heavily wooded area for her. I mean, helicopters, ATVs, horseback. It was overwhelming because it's a forest where they were looking for her. And they told me if she was put out there, she would be probably dead within 6 hours because of the wild boar, the alligators, just all the wild animals. But you have to have hope. You have to have faith.
Everybody was there. There was a lot of people that were looking for her. It was a needle in a haystack.
Police are searching for missing teenager Brittany Drexel in a heavily wooded region of South Carolina, after cell phone data shows her phone pinged in the area. It's 60 miles south of Myrtle Beach, where Brittany had snuck away for spring break.
I was just in shock, and I just wanted my sister to come back home.
I tried so hard just to keep thinking, maybe she's still out there. They searched them and they didn't find anything. After that, I had stayed in Myrtle Beach for a good month and a half.
My mom was in distress. Even though there was searchers there, she just felt like she had to do it. That's her firstborn. That's her baby. She had to find her. At least know what happened.
Hope is strange. I'd like to say in the beginning it got me through. Because I was convinced Brittany was coming home.
I left at the end of June, and then I went back to Rochester. But I was calling law enforcement every day. I just wanted to find my daughter.
Days, weeks, months, and then years pass, with no answers for Brittany's family and friends.
I felt like nothing was going on in Brittany's case. But this went on for years. I mean, you're talking, she went missing in 2009. I can tell you, the ball was dropped here. The police wanted me to go away. And I felt like I had to just keep after them and after them and after them. And I didn't care if I was bugging them. I don't care. You're going to answer to me. I am her mother.
Dawn was desperate for answers. She felt like she wasn't getting cooperation from the police. Imagine trying to put yourself in the position where she's a mom. She's been thrust into a world of not just the justice system, but trying to maneuver. You're dealing with law enforcement. You're dealing with media. And it's a very foreign and frightening place. I put myself more in a role of, let me help her get her story told.
I held on to just a little bit of hope that she was still alive because I always went back to we didn't have anything.
Dawn Drexel wouldn't quit. She drove all of us crazy. She called me every single day since 2011. It didn't matter if it was Christmas. It didn't matter what time of day it was. And I always answered the phone. Some of my friends would say, you have no boundaries with this woman. And I would say, I can't. I saw what it was like to lose a child. I sat there with her, and nobody would help her.
After more than 2 years with no answers, on August 1st, 2011, out of the blue, Myrtle Beach police receive a strange and stunning call from a young woman. The story she tells concerns her father, a man named Ray Moody.
She said, I think my dad had something to do with Brittany Drexel's disappearance. Mr. Moody, his main girlfriend was Angel, and there was a time that Angel called over there one night and said that Ray was going to get all of them locked up because of what he had done to that girl.
So you guys were dating at the time?
Yes.
Myrtle Beach police brought Angel in and talked with her about that after the kids had called. And the substance of that conversation was, Ray didn't have anything to do with that. I'm so sick and tired of people blaming Ray for everything that happens.
Because if you're trying to accuse him of anything, then I'm not going to be involved in it. Because I say he didn't, okay? I say you did not. I'm not, yeah, you are.
Despite Angel's denials, police take a deeper look at Ray Moody.
They were able to get a search warrant at Sunset Lodge, which is hotel / long-term rental. Raymond was staying at that area when Brittany had gone missing.
Select crime scene technicians, with help from Myrtle Beach Police and the Georgetown County Sheriff's Office, searched an apartment at the Sunset Lodge south of Georgetown today.
They were looking for anything that would tie Ray to Brittany Drexel. They went out and talked with Ray at his cabinet shop. And they told him they were searching for Brittany Drexel. And he said, you're smart, you'll figure it out.
After years with no leads, Ray Moody is a suspect in the disappearance of Brittany Drexel. Detectives are questioning him after his daughter reported her suspicions about him to the police.
That investigation, that part of it, the search warrant, yielded nothing fruitful. There wasn't enough to arrest him.
Once again, the case goes cold. It's now been 7 years since Brittany vanished on a spring break trip to Myrtle Beach.
I can tell you it felt like a roller coaster ride. That's what it felt like. You know, ups and downs. They would get tips and then it'd be like, oh, you know, maybe she's getting located or whatever the case may be. And then there was false hope. And then that really kills you inside, you know, because they're like, you're just like, is she ever going to be found?
The 4th or 5th year into her disappearance, I knew she wasn't coming back. I'm like, I know she's gone.
It's a strange feeling to have to switch looking for, somebody physically here, and now we're just looking for, what's left. And that, I think, was the worst thing I've ever gone through, emotionally, the worst thing I've ever felt.
Law enforcement would call me, and I would talk to them, and this went on for years.
I spent, I can't tell you how many hours just on the internet doing research. I obsessed over watching the video of Brittany walking in and out of the hotel. I would slow it down to see if there was anything that I could pick up on. I would speed it up. I watched at all different angles. I couldn't watch it enough because I always felt...
Well, don't you want to know information about the little girl that went missing?
The informant is an inmate named Taquan Brown, serving a 25-year prison term for manslaughter. He claims that he witnessed a man named Timothy Deshawn Taylor rape and kill Brittany.
He tells this story that Brittany Drexel had been kidnapped in Myrtle Beach, was brought to a house near McClellanville, and she had been raped and tortured and all sort of terrible stuff. And he was over there and saw all of this stuff. And she had ran out the back door, and they had called her and brought her back in and killed her.
So I was just sitting there sobbing, and I couldn't even talk. I couldn't do it. The FBI told me she tried to escape, and she ran out. They went to go get her, brought her back, and then they ended up shooting her. And then they rolled her up in a blanket or a rug and then threw her in an alligator pit. And I walked out of there and I'm like, oh my God. We always had kept hope alive that maybe Brittany was still out there. And that really messed me up, big time. Having to picture that in your mind, it's just crazy. To think that someone would do that with my daughter.
Agents furiously work to confirm the details provided by the informant.
Now, what really corroborated his story was Brittany's cell phone had pinged in an area in the direction of McClellanville.
Even though that's where the inmate claims Brittany was murdered, investigators know their previous searches in that area were big news stories, and that confidential informants will often say anything in hopes of getting a reduced sentence.
Look, CIs will lie, and I don't use CIs unless I can back up what they're saying.
Timothy Deshawn Taylor is already in jail on separate robbery charges. Authorities work to keep him behind bars, while they look for any information that might support the confidential informant's claim. But Dawn believes the awful story could be true.
Dawn did not allow herself any time to mourn. She quickly shifted from, I don't know what happened to my daughter, to where's her body? I want my daughter brought home.
I said, I'm done. I said, I'm done with the bull. I said, I want my daughter found. So I don't have to wonder where she is anymore.
Seven years after Brittany Drexel disappeared in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, investigators are looking into a stunning claim by a jailhouse informant that he witnessed a man named Timothy Deshawn Taylor murder her.
All of a sudden, the investigation and the media attention, all of us shift to what the investigators tell us. Listen, if the FBI's out there saying, we got a suspect, we believe that this is what happened, Taylor is under investigation, being charged with armed robbery. And I had the opportunity to confront Taylor about his involvement in this case. Did you do this? And he said, no, I did not.
In August 2016, the Taylor family launches a media offensive, releasing a statement maintaining his innocence. They claim the informant lied to the FBI in a desperate attempt to cut a deal for early parole.
That informant said that Brittany Drexel was buried at a plot in Berkeley County, which is west of Charleston. Investigators went down there, and once they start digging, that informant calls in, and he says, look, she was fed to alligators. She was not buried. Brown later came in and said, all of that was untrue. I lied. So none of that went anywhere, but there were many more like that, false leads.
Police eventually cleared Timothy Deshawn Taylor of any involvement in Brittany's disappearance. It's another emotionally draining twist for her family and friends.
And by that point, I was so frustrated. I didn't really trust anybody. So after that, I was on the phone with the FBI every week. I mean, they would keep in contact with me, let me know what was going on.
The FBI agents, since 2016 on, were determined to find out what happened and bring my mom that justice that she was grieving and asking for, and the justice that obviously all of us wanted.
I had a meeting with the FBI and some of the law enforcement that was involved in Brittany's case. I just felt like Brittany's never going to be found. This is ridiculous. After that, I felt like nothing was going on in Brittany's case.
Years pass with an investigation that seems to be stalled. Then, in May 2022, 13 years since Brittany was last seen, once again, there's a phone call, out of the blue. And once again, it offers hope.
On a Friday night, I get a call from a defense attorney, Scott Bellamy. He said, well, I've got somebody that's wanting to give you some information. He'll give the information to you, but he won't give it to the police. And I said, well, who is it? And he said, Ray Moody.
It's the same man investigators looked at earlier in the case, when his daughter reported that he may have been involved. Police were unable then to connect him to Brittany's disappearance. Now, his lawyer claims Moody has a story to tell, but he'll only tell it to state authorities and not the FBI.
He wants to stay in the state system. He does not want to go in the federal system because he knows he's going to spend the rest of his life in prison, and he wants to be closer to family members. And if you go in the federal prison, you may be in West Virginia, you may be in California.
Where are y'all from? Alabama. Yeah, that's right. I thought, yeah.
Ray Moody sits down with state investigators and begins laying out the details of what he says happened on the night of April 25th, 2009.
Ray said that in 2009, he and Angel had come to Myrtle Beach. They were riding down the boulevard. He said, so a young lady came out of a hotel, and he said that he and Angel were smoking pot, and Ray asked Brittany, do you want some of this pot? And she said, yeah. Ray said that Brittany got in the back seat. They went where he and Angel had been camping at the pole yards, and they were just going to hang out there for a while.
We're just having a good time, smoking some pot and stuff, you know. Angel left. And while she was gone, I changed the whole subject, what was going on.
Can you describe the events that happened when Angel leaves? So Angel's obviously not involved. Can you talk us through that?
I made her take her clothes off. Yeah. And she was pretty cooperative.
Yeah, she was.
But it was against her will.
It was. Yeah. Did she say anything to you specifically at that time?
She said she was going to, she'd tell Angel on me.
And did you Start to have sex with her, or did something happen to stop that?
To stop me?
Yes.
No, I did.
I did.
I raped her.
And he said, she scratched me. I hit her. All of that was over. And he said, then I killed her. He said, I strangled her to death. Ray Moody never showed any remorse. Was a very disturbed individual at a deep level. Angel came back and said, where is Brittany? And he said, you don't see her, do you? And she said, no. He said, well, don't ever ask about her again. The next morning before daybreak, he got up and he said, I dug the hole, buried her body.
Picked her right up and walked out, probably about 150 feet away, more towards the landing, out where they had a like grove of trees and stuff growing, and put her underneath the tree.
So we were like, will you take us to her body? Yeah, I'll take you where she's buried. And they put him on a four-wheeler and drove him through. He said, I haven't been here in 13 years. But that's the place.
A search of the area begins on May 11th, 2022.
So once they start digging, there was bones. There was a nose ring, and there was one contact lens. The next day, they had her as Brittany by her dental records, and then within 2 days, they had DNA that said that is in fact Brittany Drexel.
Brittany Drexel's family has spent 13 years desperately searching for answers in her disappearance. And now, with a suspect in custody, they finally have them. But their worst fears have been realized.
I was so mad because Raymond Moody had been person of interest back in 2011. He's a level 3 sex offender. He shouldn't even be in Myrtle Beach with all the kids and stuff here. Okay? You've got to be kidding me.
The most frustrating part of this whole investigation for me is I learned that the day after Brittany Drexel went missing, they pulled Raymond Moody over. When you get a speeding ticket, it came up that he was a registered sex offender. He has scratches on his face. There's a missing girl in town. It doesn't take a genius to say, hey, wait a second. Maybe we should take this guy in. Maybe we should look at him. Nobody batted an eye. She was the perfect target. You know, we hear from him, oh, she wanted to party. She wanted to get in the car and smoke weed. From the friends and family that I've spoken to, Brittany Drexel could not stand the smell of marijuana. She would not smoke marijuana. She would not even date a guy who smoked marijuana. And if Raymond Moody said that he lured her to the car with marijuana, Raymond Moody's lying. It's incomprehensible to me that